We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to yet another Sunday. And if it's Sunday, it is the Bubb Report that's on at 10 a.m. Of course, if you're just joining us and if you're coming into the room, please remember to like and share this week's live stream. Of course, you can catch a repeat episode of this week's live stream on WPG10 television this evening at 8 p.m., as well as on GBN television on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Of course, as you're coming into the room, folks, do let us know where you're watching us from this week. We know that we have our regular viewers in different parts of Grenada and the world. So please don't hesitate to indicate where you are joining us from. I know that we have some usual suspects in Grenada, in Four Roads on Grenville Street, my stomping ground, if you will. We have some folks joining us also from Montreal in Canada. We also have some folks joining us from Brooklyn, New York in the Grenadian diaspora. And of course, before we get into this week's program, the full-throated program, I do want to take this opportunity to extend happiest birthday greetings to both Rita Gabriel and Kathy Ann Elizabeth Stewart. Both ladies are celebrating birthdays this week and this weekend. Of course, there is a party that's happening there for them this afternoon. Of course, both Kathy and Rita are avid viewers of the Bubb Report, so we want to extend happiest birthday greetings to them. Of course, folks, as you're getting into the room, remember to like and share this week's live stream. And of course, we want to get straight into this week's editorial. Now, one of the most, let me see if I can pull that up here, make sure that works very well. Now, one of the most distressing problems facing Grenada today is the illegal occupation of land or squatting. Of course, this is not only a Grenadian issue, but it is a Caribbean-wide issue. Now, the internationally accepted definition of squatting is the illegal occupation of land or housing. The Global Development Research Center defines a squatter, a settlement, as a residential area which has developed without legal claims to the land and or permission from the concerned authorities to build as a result of their illegal or semi-legal status. Infrastructure and services are usually inadequate. Now, the causes of squatting are several, but the most frequently given are the inability of successive governments to meet the needs of urban growth by providing land for affordable housing to satisfy the needs of its citizenry, the rate of population growth, the differences in income between urban and rural workers, and the attractiveness of urban lifestyles. Of course, we've seen that migration of rural citizens into urban centers. We've seen that in the context of Grenada. Folks who moved, for example, from parishes such as St. David and St. Andrew into the Grand Anse area specifically, whether that's in Panday, Grand Anse Valley, and now we have Guankai. Now, of course, people move to secure opportunities for themselves and their families. Thousands of individuals, in violation of the law and ownership rights, are seizing land and erecting makeshift dwellings across Grenada and, of course, the Caribbean. Now, squatter settlements are all over Grenada, including in the Guankai area. They're also located on the hillsides, roadsides, gully banks, inner city areas, on government land, private lands, etc. Now, before this current Guankai episode, governments in the past in Grenada attempted to evict squatters from Moonshadow Park in St. Andrew. How many of you remember Moonshadow Park in St. Andrew? That was back in 2006, as well as in Panday Beach and areas of Belmont in St. George's, including, of course, in the South Grand Anse Valley as well. Now, while the administration in Grenada, the current administration, launched land regularization program for squatters last year, it is important to appreciate that the eviction of squatters should be balanced against providing housing support for the affected families. One must never be in a rush to put the proverbial cart before the horse in those cases. So, folks, just as a programming note as well, it must be noted that we did invite the Member of Parliament to sit with us this week to speak to the issues in Guankai, as well as the Ministry of Agriculture, who is executing the land regularization program for squatters in Grenada. They gave us a commitment, well, at least the ministry gave us a commitment by way of the press secretary that someone will appear here. It is now 10:15 a.m. and we have not heard from them. But we did reach out to the ones who are responsible for executing this policy, because we intended to have a segment on this issue. But of course, at a later date, we intend to do so. So folks, what we want to do now is to take our first break and come back for the first segment of the program. Please remember to like and share this week's live stream. Stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And of course, as you are coming into the room, do us a favor by liking and sharing this week's program. Especially those of you who are over on YouTube, do give us a like and a subscribe. Not forgetting, of course, of the folks on Facebook as well. But let's see who is here. We have Mr. Thompson Kador. Mr. Thompson Kador, good morning to you, sir. You're joining us from Woodford and St. John. Of course, that will be informed the second segment of our program today. We also have here Agnes Henry, who is saying blessed morning. Kipling Francis is saying good morning. Good morning. I remember Kipling, I believe you were also an avid viewer, listener of Sundays with George Grant, so it's good to see you here. So we have Anthony Wendell Duriggs, who is saying a good Grenadian morning. Good morning to you, sir. Let's see who else we have here. We have Unison Joseph, who is joining us from Barrie in Ontario. We have Elva Gill. Somebody saying us that there is no sound on Facebook. Can we verify that the sound is okay on Facebook? For those of you who are watching over there, just let us know. Of course, Margaret Francis, usual suspect. Margaret, I believe we have your cousin here this morning. I just found out one of our guests is your cousin. I didn't know that. Grenada is a very small place indeed. Then we have Lydia Louison as well, who I believe is joining us from Montreal. Okay, so folks, let us get straight into the first segment of the program. Here we go. Now, the realm of investment migration, of course, the realm of investment migration, Grenada's Citizenship by Investment program has proven in some respects to significantly contribute to Grenada's development in the mid-2000s. Now, in the first half of 2023, for example, CBI revenues soared by an astounding 213% compared to the same period in 2022. The third quarter of 2023 was even better, according to Grenada's CBI unit. Now, the CBI program offers individuals and families the opportunities to secure Grenadian and OECS citizenship while contributing to the Caribbean nation's growth and development via a range of investment options. Now, set up 10 years ago in the context of Grenada, the National Transformation Fund was created as a means of transforming and diversifying Grenada's economy by stimulating growth and bolstering its financial independence. The fund finances projects across the economy, including in tourism, agriculture, and alternative energy. CBI applicants opting for the National Transformation Fund route contribute a minimum of $200,000 to the fund. A hefty 2/3 or 65% of capital projects and programs at Grenada's Ministry of Social Development, for example, and housing were directly financed by the National Transformation Fund between 2016 to 2022, according to government data. Now, such initiatives have included funding for the Grand Bacolet Juvenile Rehabilitation and Treatment Center, as well as other major infrastructure projects across the country. In fact, I believe the CBI unit in Grenada started offering the media an opportunity to see how those CBI revenues are being used by way of the NTF across various infrastructure projects in the country. Now, however, the CBI programs in Grenada and the OECS have come at several costs and risks. The environmental cost, for example, of some of these projects in Grenada is telling, with several projects doing long-term damage to the island's ecological facade. Of course, these are issues we covered extensively on the program. Additionally, and of more recent vintage, the US issued several proclamations suspending issuances of immigrant and specified non-immigrant visas, including the B1, B2, business, tourist, and student categories for nationals across the OECS. It started, of course, with Antigua and Barbuda and Dominica, but it has now extended to Grenada and St. Lucia, of course, citing concerns linked to the CBI investment structures. Of course, glaringly, we learned that some CBI programs do not have a residency requirement, and that is one of the reasons the United States articulated cracking down on, or at least having travel restrictions in place. Now, in the context of the European Union, they have also engaged in at least overtures of having travel restrictions. In December 2025, the European Commission released its 8th annual visa suspension mechanism report, stating that it now views the existence of Caribbean CBI programs as sufficient grounds to suspend Schengen visa-free access for those countries, representing a material shift in the risk profile of access to the Schengen area, of course, and that will affect all of the territories. Now, of course, in the context of CBI regulation in the Caribbean, in at least the OECS, Caribbean nations insist that they have been engaging in the due diligence work as demanded by the US and the EU, signed an agreement to further strengthen the integrity, transparency, and sustainability of the CBI programs offered by the 5 member states through the establishment of a regional regulatory authority. According to the OECS Secretariat, these reforms were developed through extensive regional and international consultations with CBI, CIP industry stakeholders and international partners such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Commission. Now, this week, we will attempt to make sense of the current state of the CBI or CIP industry in Grenada and the OECS. And here to have this very important conversation is, of course, we have Mr. Richard Duncan, OBE, who is also the chair of Grenada's CBI committee. We have joining us from St. Lucia, Mr. Alan Chassenay, who is the leader of the opposition in St. Lucia and who is also a well-respected entrepreneur and leader in private sector business ventures in St. Lucia. And of course, Mr. Chassenay, you have a very fascinating story as well. We have to come back to talk about those Irish roots, sir. I would love to hear that part of your story. And of course, no stranger to the Bubb Report is, of course, Mr. Brian Samuel. Mr. Brian Samuel, the undefeated champion of sparring here on the Bubb Report. If an award is to be given to anyone who is passionate about what he talks about, it would be Mr. Brian Samuel. So, gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Yeah, good morning, Kelloggh. Thank you very much. Good morning. Morning,
yes. Absolutely. And of course, gentlemen, we are having, just to give our audience context, I think it's important that we establish the context here. We are having this conversation today against some very critical backdrops, if you will. Of course, the most important one, I believe, at this moment has to do with, of course, the travel restrictions that we are seeing. Of course, in the intro here, we just articulated what the EU would be doing, what they may intend to do, and what the US has done currently. Of course, the caveat is that the US has engaged in travel bans blanketly across the global south, but there is, of course, a very special context to what's happening here in the OECS as well. So, gentlemen, let us begin by talking about those particular sanctions. Now, on a previous program, Brian, you articulated the view that Grenada was playing with visa fire in the context of its CBI program, but we will get into that. But Mr. Duncan, I do want to begin with you as a regulator here, and of course, in the context of the broader scheme of what the OECS is also attempting to do. How much of what is happening externally and geopolitically, is informing how you are proceeding with processes around regulation
Yes,
of
Kelon.
CBI programs.
Right. So, Kelon, I've been on record as saying that that which can survive into the future must mutate as the environment changes. Right. If you don't mutate, you don't transform as the environment changes, obviously you will be extinct. So clearly, some of the things that are being done in OECS now, while it is good, even without regulatory or external influences, is in fact given impetus by such forces. So suffice it to say that we have the US 6 CBI principles that we have been working with the US on since 2023, and has been going great guns. The advent of the Eastern Caribbean Citizenship by Investment Regulatory Authority is another phase in the evolution of the space. And then individually now you have each island territory doing their very best to make sure that the internal processes, their due diligence, and the risk management is up to stuff. We are at different phases and stages in that process. I think one of the biggest thrusts now is in the area of biometrics, right, which is critically important for all our development partners. So it's evolving, it's mutating, and yes, good by itself. The impetus, of course, in large measure, is our response to the concerns of our development partners, which we always take into account to make sure that the programs are, one, sustainable, two, run in accordance with best practice. And of course, risk management is an ongoing exercise.
Mr. Chassanet, you've heard Mr. Duncan here and his articulation of the case, and he ended by articulating that risk management continues to be an ongoing exercise. And even Mr. Chassanet, with what was articulated in respect of working with whether it's the US or the European Union, we still see the gauntlet coming down. So how sustainable really would CIP programs be? Because again, the impetus of CIP programs is visa-free access, ease of travel to particular places. So you get a passport that's considered quote unquote powerful, that gives you ease to different places, then I mean, that is why people would want to get it, right? But if we are seeing a situation where now we having these, whether it's travel bans, visa restrictions, things like that, how attractive can these programs be into the future in the context of risk?
I think it's very, very important. Well, first of all, good morning to you and all to your listeners and to the other panelists.
Yes.
I think that we have to understand the past as in relationship as to why we are where we are today. There are a lot of persons who want to suggest that the attack on our CIP programs has a lot to do with us. I would say to you, there's some truth to that, but the reality, in my opinion, is in the last 10 years, the Western countries have had a deeper emphasis on border control and immigration. That has become the hot topic. You see what's going on in the UK, what's going on in Europe, clearly what's going on in the United States of America. And the population in those countries have been supporting that. They themselves have wanted to see immigration changes. And I think it's coming out of that necessity that those countries, when they did audits, started to realize that the deepened relationships that they have with us, the visa-free accesses, the historical ties that they have to this region, and that our borders were not in keeping with the standard of their borders. I think that's a very important premise for all us to understand. So the attack hasn't necessarily come because of our CIP programs, and I know that there are people who would like to think that that's the case. The attack has come because in examining our CIP programs, that it has created loopholes where those countries cannot protect their own borders. So even recently in the UK, my government, as an example, wants to try to confuse the issues where the UK is saying the number of people applying for political asylum has increased in St. Lucia, and as such, they took away our visa free access. But it was also the CIP program, because there are multiple examples of persons who obtained citizenship through St. Lucia, not having to come to St. Lucia, having those passports in different countries in which they don't have easy access into the West, Europe in particular. And we're getting on a plane using that passport, destroying that passport on the plane. And when they arrive now in the UK, asking for political asylum. So it means that countries like the UK and now Europe are saying these CIP programs need to be changed if in fact they're going to continue to give that kind of access to their countries. And remember, this is all coming because of their concerns about their own border controls, and in particular, their immigration status. And I think that we have been slow to react. So even this idea of the regulator, there's a sense of urgency for the regulator. And the regulator up to now still has not been appointed. All we have done now is at the beginning of the year, I think that pretty much all of the OECS countries had passed the legislations. But those legislations really don't come into effect until the regulator is actually appointed and moving forward. The other thing is that's very, very clear is that the discussions that we've had about the regulator have not tried to deal with the past. Now, in addition to the immigration issue, of which America, Canada, UK, and Europe are all moving on those issues with regards to visa access. So Canada has already made the decision. UK has already suspended visa-free access for Dominicans and for St. Lucians, and are threatening other countries. And Europe obviously has already put out this note. The other thing that is happening, and it's amazing to me how slow it's happening, but it's going to happen, is that in the case in St. Kitts with the guy, Philip Martinez, Philip Martinez actually won the case. Philip Martinez proved that there were 155 files that he provided, and proved that those persons obtained citizenship through discounting. Very important. There was an admission when the St. Kitts CIP authority wrote to those individuals and said, it's been alleged that you have not paid the right amount of money. A number of them admitted that. Some decided that they were not going to pay the difference, and some have now decided to pay the difference. But the problem is the damage has now been done, meaning that monies were moving through corresponding banks that were illegal, and they bring up significant AML issues. And I think that our central bank, if I'm to point blame to anyone, has not moved to be able to address this issue, because this is almost like an offense that has been committed and is still waiting for what the penalty is going to be. And we can only look at what happened to banks in Canada, banks in Mexico, American banks with regards to AML. It takes years, but the system has to cleanse itself. And this is a significant threat that is still looming. And it's because we were refusing to deal with the past ills. And we almost want to say, from the time the regulator comes on, there's an asterisk, and all is forgotten from the past, and we're now going to move forward, and now we're clean. So these are some of the issues I'd like to bring up initially.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to get to brass tacks with respect to the scope of the regulation. Some have even debated the legality of it, really, but we will be getting to that. But Brad, you've heard Mr. Chassanet here. He is slightly deviating from what your perennial theory of the case here is on the CIP issue here, that those travel restrictions are happening not necessarily because of the CBI programs, but because of what's happening internally in those countries. I mean, in the context of the UK, we see the anti-immigrant rhetoric that's happening there. Of course, we see that in the US and the policies that followed. So let us contextualize, if you will, just how you see it in respect of those risks that we discussed earlier.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me back again. Just want to start with the point of order or correction and so on. You were right when you said that the application fee is $200,000 if you're going straight into the National Transformation Fund of Grenada, or $270,000 if you're buying the real estate option. Everybody thinks that's per passport. That's not. That's per application. And each application can have up to 4 passports. So the actual money that we're getting is way less than 200 or 270. It's actually about 85,000 per passport issued. So let me just make that correction first. Alan, it's good, interesting that you mentioned the discounting that was going on in St. Lucia and Dominica.
No, I said St. Kitts. I said
St. Kitts.
There are allegations of discounting in St. Lucia and Dominica, but the proof has been in St. Kitts.
I stand corrected.
We don't want Mr. Chastity to get sued, okay?
No. We also have proof here, and I'm sure that Mr. Duncan will back me up on this, in that Hang Seng Industries, I think it was in 2024 or 25, was suspended for 90 days for illegal discounting operations. So St. Kitts is not alone. And here is my issue with this. There is so much money at stake at CBI that things are happening that there is no economic basis for the things that are happening. We are building empty hotels. It's the same things happened in St. Kitts. Last time I went to St. Kitts, I looked up at Frigate Bay at all those wonderful condos, and I thought, oh, this is really moving. That was in the daytime. When I went back that night, they're all empty. There's no lights. And the trouble with CBI is it skews the economic market. Sorry to talk like a banker here, because I was a banker for many, many years. You think any bank would finance that monstrosity they're building at Lever? At the farthest, as they say, behind God's back, where there is no water, no electricity, it's up in the island. We are building the biggest hotel by twice the factor of the current biggest hotel in Grenada. We're building a 500-room, ugly monstrosity that is more at home in Guangdong than in Lever. So we already have the situation where the economics are being totally skewed by CBI, because there is no due diligence on these projects. There is no economic due diligence on does it make sense or not. So
Brian, yes, we will be getting to the investment aspect of it. But I want to speak to, again, those external risk factors here, especially around the whole idea of visa access and things like that.
Yeah, I was just going to get to that. I mean, when I wrote, you quoted it at the beginning that we're playing with visa fire, I had no idea that it was going to be so soon. I mean, I literally did a cartoon 2 weeks before the suspension of the Grenada visas issues got announced. So we now have our young people being penalized, finding it impossible to get a visa, finding it impossible to go to study in America. We have athletes who can't get to the Olympics because they can't raise the $10,000 for the visa bond. This is directly attributable to CBI. And people say, oh no, it's to do with overstays. Well, I checked on this. According to the US data, Grenada's overstay ratio is about 1.5%. Jamaica's overstay ratio is about 5.5%.
Yeah, but Mr. Samuel, Jamaica also is subjected to the same visa bans. So I think
no, they're not. No, they're not. They don't have the. I could stand corrected, but Jamaica does not have the $10,000 visa bond. They don't.
Oh, the bond you're referencing here. Okay.
I'm talking about the bond. Yeah, I mean that is the killer for anybody who wants to travel to America. Anybody who has their visa already, I think it's fine. But if you're applying for a new visa, who can afford to put down $10,000 US for each and every time you go? So that basically kills travel. So that is already a risk that has come true. That bird has flown. And it is, we could say what we like about why Grenada got it. But let's look at Jamaica doesn't have it, Barbados doesn't have it, Trinidad doesn't have it. P.S. They don't sell passports.
Well, the Prime Minister of Trinidad also has a fairly good relationship with the United States.
Right, man. Yeah.
So I depends on how you play the game. I mean, there's so many ways you can look at this. But gentlemen, let us go on to the second part of this conversation, which was alluded to earlier. And really that has to do, and Mr. Duncan, I want to begin with you here on this, and then I'll bring in Bran to talk about, in his case, what he references as the mega project myth. Brad, we will share that slide there. But Mr. Duncan, let us talk about the current state of investment projects in Grenada. Of course, the major one that still continues to be at this point, quite frankly, it's an eyesore. It's that project down there in Grand Anse. I'm not sure what's happening with that. But let us talk about what is currently in the pipeline, what is coming on stream, and where we are with those.
Okay, so let's start up with our pride and joy under the CBI program. We have several projects that have been completed and operational. For example, the Silver Sands at Beach House. Yes. We have the Lesser Just Six Senses Intercontinental is going great guns. Lesser Just collections on the way. So I know Brian has consistently critiqued those that are operational to say that the occupancy is low and stuff like that and so forth. Then he speaks about the one in Liver, the monstrosity. I like to tell Brian and remind him that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Well, having said that, having said that, right, let us agree that the Point Saline International Airport was probably, in terms of length of runway, twice that of Pearls. The, what you might call the arrival lounge, right, at Point Saline was probably 30 times that of Pearls at the time of construction. And today, in terms of the terminal at MBIA, it's now inadequate. So sometimes when we look at these, the size of these projects, we have to think 50 years down the line. The last point I want to make is that there's no vegetation in Grenada that is in its original state. Grenada has been under human occupation for several hundred years, under sugarcane, under cotton, what have you not. So the whole question of development, environmental change over time is something that we have to manage. The question is it being done within existing norms, rules, and regulations? Maybe they are, maybe they are not. And if they are not, then there's a legal and judicial process through which we go to make sure that these things can be righted. Whether it is CBI, whether it is government, whether it is local private sector that are doing these developments. So I just want to make those several points. In the pipeline, I think we have done several things. We have attempted to recalibrate the program to ensure that local Grenadian participation in the program can be increased and expanded by lowering the fees and the barriers to entry, as we like to call them, in economic terms. We also have in the pipeline, it's still in the early formative stage, whereby we would want to emphasize what we call Government of Grenada promoted projects. So instead of the private sector, local and international, dominating the space, we can have Government of Grenada public sector projects, and we go out there and we find the best developer to raise the funds and to develop those projects for on behalf of the Government of Grenada. So that is one of the initiatives still in the early stages. I think that Brian has had some ideas around that. So yes, the program is evolving, the program is developing. And I do take the point that some of the things that we're trying to pin on the CBI is, I would say, unfair, given the stance of the US. And the final point I like to make, Kelon, is that CBI existed before visa-free access to Europe was a thing. And also, with a Grenadian passport, you still have to apply for a US visa. And finally, these countries now have the electronic travel authorization program, whereby they can screen anyone attempting to enter the borders, Grenadian or not, prior to embarking on a plane. And therefore, the controls that I want to have on the border, to my mind, have been enhanced over the last, I would say, 1 to 3 years. So I'll pause here for now.
Well, you've not addressed the that project. The name is escaping me now. But
no, I agree.
It's a white elephant. Would you not say it's a white elephant at this point?
It's more like cream, Kelon. It's more like cream, right? And why I say, more cream elephant as opposed to a white elephant. Why do I say that? There is a substitute developer who has been selected by the Grenada authorities to proceed with that project. And they have had several other projects on the ground that they are trying to complete. And I'm speaking about the Silver Sands group, the JDC group. As you know, they have expanded and done some work on the property in Grenada. They have completed the beach house, and I think they have another phase to do. And they also did some work in Port Louis. Having said that, the hope is that they will then turn their attention to Kawana Bay, which they have the approval to develop, and they're trying to recalibrate how they will build out that project. So that is in the works, probably taking longer than everyone expected, but there is a substitute developer there. And very importantly, the investors who invested in that project are, as we speak, duly compensated for their property rights that have been acquired by the government of Grenada to allow that project to proceed. So I just thought I'll stick that in there for what it is worth.
Yes, Brian, let me bring you back in frame here. And while I do, I will go ahead and share the screen. Brian, your theory of the case is that in the context of at least Grenada, a lot of these projects, whether it's Livera, whether it's what we're seeing at La Sagesse, of course, the two hotel developments there, what we're seeing at Mount Hartman, I don't know what we're seeing there. I don't know what it is. Apparently, I was threatened with jail time if, I were to see what's happening there.
Yeah, me too.
But but Brian, your articulation of the case here is that there is a mega project myth in the context of a lot of what we're seeing, especially in the real estate aspect of these projects. Can you articulate what you're saying here, please?
Yeah, basically, who is fooling whom here? I mean, Grenada has a GDP of 1.4 billion US dollars. Who are we fooling to say that we could do one project for $2.9 billion, another project for $1.4 billion? It's like putting an air conditioner on a VW Beetle, 1962 VW Beetle. It just, you cannot support it. We don't have the infrastructure to do this. We don't have the employees to do this. We don't have the electricity, the water, all of these things we do not have. And yet we have approved these projects. So I'd like to know, on what basis do we approve and say that we're going to build a $2.9 billion project? Why don't we start small? Why don't we start with just $500 million? Why don't we do like we have done before? We take things slowly and then we ramp up. But no, Livera, 500-room hotel, 18-hole golf course, bigger than twice as big as Sandoz. $2.9 billion. It is a complete and utter myth. We don't have the infrastructure to do this. And then we have to think about how many passports do we have to sell to do these projects. I've already mentioned that it's not $270,000 per passport that we get. It's actually about $85,000 because it's an average of 3.5 applications, 3.5 passports, family members per application. So how many do we have to give away? Well, I got the answer. To do a $2.9 billion project at the current prices, drum roll please, 41,455 passports we have to sell to finance $2.9 billion. That's equivalent to 35% of our population for one project alone. That doesn't even mention Livera and the other one. We have already sold 13,400 passports, which is equivalent to 11.5% of our population. Nobody's even thinking about the demographics and the future risk of all of this. So my thing is that this thing about mega projects, $1 billion and $1 billion and $1 billion. Come on, let's not fool ourselves here. We don't have the capacity to do that. Let's start small and then see if we can grow. But no, all of a sudden now it's all billion and billion and billion. That's my issue with this thing. We are fooling ourselves.
Let me bring in Brian. I'm sorry, Richard. I want to give you the right of reply, please. Yes.
Yes, please. So Brian is right to a certain extent, right? So the project has been approved in, I think it was 2018 or 19.
Yes.
Our current role is to make sure that we have such a project properly, phased, and the components clearly understood. So it is not for the CBI committee now to advocate a revocation of the approval that has been granted, but rather to manage. Maybe a point in time might come where there could be some measure of dialogue and engagement, but as it is now, that is not our role at this stage. So, Brian, I take it that you will understand and appreciate that in the context of private international investment, that there are rules of engagement, and I try to make sure that both sides are, what would I say, comfortable and at ease and understanding and appreciating what is at play and how we can best move forward. So that's our stance with respect to finally, Kellon.
Yes.
That is why sometimes we refer to these things as development, because Brian would know that if the private sector moves forward on certain initiatives, then it draws in and crowds in the public sector to put certain things in place to make sure that the private sector succeeds. So clearly, the electricity, the water, and such alike would not exist prior to the investor coming in. But if the investor is in, then it necessarily follows that the state now has to play its role to facilitate the success of that development.
Brian, is there anything else you wish to add? Because I do have a follow-up question for Mr. Duncan. Brian, you wanted to add anything else?
Yeah. I mean, I would like to know, and I have written to Tom Anthony at the IMA agency. I've not gotten a response. The next step is to put it out there in the public. I want to know what is happening at Mount Hartman. It is our country. It is our patrimony. It is our land, and we don't know. If you look at the Mount Hartman website, it is an absolute joke. I mean, my granddaughter could do a better website than that. How many passports have we sold for the Mount Hartman development project? How much money has gone into the project? Because just a couple of buildings have been built, and that's it. They've torn down some mangroves, and nothing has happened. If you look at the pictures, the satellite pictures from 3 years ago until now, absolutely nothing has happened on the ground. So I want to know at Mount Hartman what is happening. How much money has gone to the developers? How much money and how many passports have been issued? And this goes back to my fundamental issue with CBI in Grenada. There's no transparency. We have no knowledge of what is going on. Can somebody please tell us what's going on?
Yes, Mr. Duncan, quick question here, and that follow-up, I think is very important. With respect to the former investors at Kawana Bay, you did say that they of course there were more than, I believe there were close to 200 investors there. Now, what is the amount have they been paid out? What have they been paid out? What was the compensation structure looking like? Do we know?
No.
At what cost that came to the state?
Right. So I do not know, Kellon, that Attorney General's office has carriage of that matter along with the Ministry of Finance. But suffice it to say that the government acquired the property, and in any self-respecting jurisdiction, once you acquire people's property rights, those rights have to be valued and the people adequately compensated. And that there's a website or a portal created where people came in, they proved their ownership, whether freehold or leasehold. A valuer was engaged and a settlement figure arrived at with the council, and those monies are being settled.
And did they get to keep their passports? Did they get to keep their Grenadian passports?
Well, absolutely, yes. I don't think that there's one contention
that
at all.
That is absolutely ridiculous. They bought money to get a pass. They bought an investment in a hotel to get a pass.
Brian,
let's be clear. You know that when people invest, there are certain rights that attach to those investments, and it's not for you as the state to deprive them of those rights willy-nilly. So, for example, back in the day, those people who invested in the shrimp farm that never appeared at all, no farm, you could see something for Kawana Bay.
So they basically got a Grenadian passport for nothing.
Brian,
it is up to the authorities to recover the money from those who stole it, not the investor. That's not the investor's fault.
Okay, I want to bring in Mr. Chassanet back into the conversation here, because Mr. Chassanet, you come with a unique perspective, I think, given your history in the hotel and tourism sector. In the context of St. Lucia, the CIP program there, how much of it involves sort of the hotel development projects that we see in Grenada? Brian calls it a mega project myth. Of course, there is one, I call it and I make no apology for saying this, we have a hotel that's going up in Livera, which is supposed to be an environmentally sensitive area where turtles come to nest, which I think that habitat would be gone given the lights. Maybe we would have a museum as a requiem to the turtles up there. But in the context of Livera, you have something. I know that in the past, Grenadian, it was a case in Grenada where no building can be taller than a coconut tree. I don't think that's the case up in Livera, right? But Mr. Chastanet, how much of what's happening in St. Lucia sort of reflects perhaps or mirrors what might be occurring in Grenada, where you have a hodgepodge of different projects, some at different stages of completion, some have stalled, things like that?
So I think that, first of all, CIP cannot be blamed for the lack of a plan. The first thing a country must be able to do is to be able to put a plan in place. And I think that if anyone is going to be truthful, we would all appreciate that in the OECS, that the industry that offers us the greatest opportunity to grow our economies, to create employment, and to facilitate an infrastructure development that allows other sectors to grow. So tourism facilitates agriculture, tourism facilitates financial services, and tourism facilitates the secondary home market. But it's imperative that we put that into context. And I will say this to you. We're still measuring tourism by arrivals. We've not even gotten into the ability to measure tourism by revenue. We're using an antiquated formula of finding out how much people are spending on island. So we're using exit surveys, as if someone who is going to go to Sandals even has a clue how much they paid for their airfare, how much money they paid for anything, because it's an all-inclusive package. Literally, the only thing that they're going to purchase on island are going to be tours and maybe some art. They don't know. And I say this to you because we are so far away in this region from being able to put a plan, a tourism development plan together, exactly what Brian was talking about. That's the first thing that's required. That's outside of CIP. CIP is just a tool to now, once you have your plan, to figure out what components you're going to be able to invest. So in the case of St. Lucia, there is one real estate project, which is taking place in the south end of the island. One of the things that we did is we insisted that they bring in a manager that we felt that could sell the property. Because if you look at St. Kitts and you look at Dominica, where the hotels have been completed, what has happened is that those CIP developers have gone back to the governments to say, I need an additional allocation of files in order to continue to pay for the operations of the hotel. Now, the governments are in an awkward situation because the airlift is not there, the infrastructure development was not there in order to allow the hotel to be successful. And now that it is open, they're not going to allow it to be closed. One last point. Let me use St. Lucia as an example. And that is not to suggest it's the same thing, but you can figure out for yourself whether it is. Our government just issued the audit report, an audit report that is due 6 months after every financial year. This audit report was due in October and was only laid in front of the House in April. The report showed us that 95% of the revenue that the CIP unit was generating came from due diligence fees and administrative fees. We cannot find where the money for the sale of the passports. And Brian is 100% correct. And let me explain to you how that works. So 95%. Now, if I went to St. Lucian's beforehand and said, look, we're going to give away the passports for free, and what we're going to do is make the money on due diligence fees, $8,000, and administrative fees, which could be $30,000. Do you think that we would have bought into that? I don't think so. So now let us look at the applications. The government is saying that 2 years ago, they received 5,600 applications, and it generated $133 million in due diligence fees. And this year, we got 2,500 applications, half the number, yet the due diligence fees went to $200 million. What's the math on that? The only explanation is exactly what Brian has said. 2 years ago, on average, there was 2 applicants, two citizens in each application. And that now, going down to 2,000, there are 5 persons that were given. So the number of passports, or citizenship, that were issued 2 years ago is approximately 10,000. With the 2,000 applications, we have almost 12,000. So in 2 years, 22,000 passports were issued. But guess what? We all have to guess, because that information ought to be in the audit report, and it wasn't. Where those persons applied from, what countries that they are citizens, where were they born, all of that is relevant information. And then the singular most vexing issue that we hear around CIP, I'm going to say to you again in the context of St. Lucia, nobody knows what's happening in the escrow account. So an escrow account is a bank account that is used, that when we're selling the real estate program, the money is supposed to go into that account in order for the government to be able to be accountable for the money. So when the persons draw down on the money, it has to be relative to the construction of the project. So it means that they're not allowed to draw down the money if, in fact, construction is not taking place. So technically, we should never find ourselves in a situation where we have a white elephant or a cream elephant, because the monies are supposed to be there. But the government in St. Lucia has deliberately not provided any information, and I basically said, oh, that's not the government's money, and so we can't get involved in the private sector business. These are the things now that when the British and the Americans and the Europeans look at, that they start seeing the loopholes. And again, they did not target CIP initially, but because of our lack of transparency and a lack of ability to regulate ourselves properly, that we're now finding ourselves in a lot of problems. So the threat of CIP is that passports are being sold on the market underpriced. Now let's look at, I want us to understand what I'm going to say very clearly. Technically, all of the persons filing for citizenship, applying for citizenship, St. Kitts, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, and Grenada.
Yes.
All of those applications are supposed to be going through impacts and RSSs. No arrangement has been made by the CIP units to compensate RSSs or impacts for that work. We just heard, you're telling me 40,000 passports in Grenada. I just told you 22,000 passports in St. Lucia. The report that came out that triggered the British taking away their visa from Dominica, 55,000 passports. St. Kitts has done significantly more than all of us, and Antigua is a mystery. How do you really believe that RSSS and impacts that are grossly underfunded, undermanned, are managing the processing of all of those files? Something is wrong. And it is these issues and these questions that continue to hurt us. And now what is happening is that the penalties to be paid are being transferred to the general public. And we don't want to accept. So I'm not telling you that CIP was the cause, but CIP now has arisen because these countries are doing their own audits and they are not satisfied with the answers, nor are the citizenry satisfied with the answers. But we have a problem. And it is this lack of transparency, the fact that the numbers are not working, and that structurally there is a problem. Again, the countries are looking at and say, how is it that Grenada, and I'm just using Grenada as an example, doing this project? In the case of St. Lucia, we are giving away the passports. We increased the allocation of passports for the hotel from 1,000 files to 6,000 files. This is all in a contract. And in addition to that, we told the developer that we would pay him the equivalent of what he's paying in the administrative fee, the $30,000. We're going to pay it back to him in the form of a commission. So it means that we're getting nothing. And then they turn around and only use Chinese workers. Make that make sense to me. Make that make sense. So here it is, they're leveraging our citizenship. We've given them more files because the 6,000 files at $200,000 is $1.2 billion to build a $300 million hotel. And that the government refuses to provide the information to show that they collected $1.2 billion. It's a simple thing. And how much money is remaining in the account versus what the status of the project is at today. So there are a lot of problems that we now ourselves may not have considered as citizens, and that we now have to bring up these questions and resolve it. And we have to resolve what mistakes we made in the past and how we're going to do that. CIP should be, after we have a development plan, and we know what we want to do, we know what we can fund through our local government tax revenue, we know what the local businesses are able to do, and that all the heavy lifting that will make our plan more feasible by bringing in CIP money, which is technically supposed to be free money, money that we're not borrowing. And we agree, we're leveraging our future on that, and we must take greater consideration as to what the cost is for CIP. It is not zero.
And that brings us to a very important inflection point here. And that speaks to what the work, of course, Mr. Duncan, Mr. Chassanet articulated some of the loophole and accountability challenges that exist in the context of St. Lucia. But of course, one can extrapolate that perhaps that's not only happening in St. Lucia in the context of the program there, which brings us to the question of the regulator, the regulatory authority that was established. Let us talk about how that regional regulator or that regional regulation agency is going to treat with those issues, especially around the question of due diligence. I mean, Mr. Duncan, on previous appearances on the program, you articulated what Grenada continues to do to have due diligence for at least to vet those CBI applicants. But let us talk about how the regional regulator will treat with those issues that Mr. Chassanet just raised here.
Okay, so Kelon, thank you very much. So before I go there, just let me say that in terms of information and transparency, Grenada has been cited in 2 different IMF reports and credited for its transparency with respect to the publication of the fiscal data. And if you look on the IMA website, the information for the first quarter of 2026 is already published in terms of the revenues and so on. And finally, the idea of having what we call the contingency fund. When you look at the contingency fund, we have $65 million in an investment fund managed by the ECCB, all generated from our CBI program. So that's part of the public education and the public disclosure and so on. So let us come to the regional regulator. Yes, they are making pretty good advances. I think the CEO is about to be hired. The Grenada host country agreement is under consideration. A site or office, I think, is being identified and soon to be retrofitted and so on for commencement of the work of the regulator. They have actually started to draft some of the standards that they wish to see promulgated, and that's work being done by the interim commission right now. So that when the full-fledged commission comes into effect, at least they have tools to begin working with. One of the early standards is the question of complaints management. So as it is right now, let's say a participant in St. Lucia, let's say a local agent has a complaint against, let's say, Dominica or country X. The most we can do is to complain, but none of us could compel country X on an agent on that country X to disclose or to reveal certain information, the regulator can do that. So the allegations of underselling and such alike will no longer be allegations, because once someone accuses you, then the regulator will compel you to provide certain contracts and documents and so on to satisfy themselves that when they look at the transaction and so on, underselling is in fact taking place, and obviously sanctions will flow from that. So that's a key part in unlocking some of the alleged egregious practices in the space and leveling, as it were, the playing field. So I think, Kellon, the regulator is not a cure for all the problems that we have to solve. And I always argue that regulators provide what I call minimum standards. You can set the bar higher for your own organization if you want to be a top-notch, player in the market. So I'm just saying that for what it's worth. And in Grenada, we have done quite a lot of work. Still lots more to be done, but we try our best to improve the transparency in the program, public disclosure, as well as we have had a series of community outreaches, as Alan was saying. What are we selling to the public? We try to give to the public full disclosure. We have had about 6 of those symposia over the last 3 years. I think one is due for June, I think in Guelph/St. Mark area. So we continue to do that, and we miss no opportunity at all, such as these, to come on the program and to explain for the public what it is we are doing in the space. So hats off to the
regulators. But fundamentally, to what Mr. Chassanet has articulated here around compelling transparency and, of course, funding. I believe the RSS and our own regional, security agencies in respect of doing that due diligence work. How much of that is informing what the regulators will be doing?
Right. So as it is now, Alan is saying RSS, but I think he meant the JRCC, Joint Regional Communication Center and Caribbean Impasse. So yes, every island pays an annual, as it is now, without a regulator, sum to fund the work of the JRCC for due diligence. That is done as we speak. So that is in place, Alan. However, with the advent of the regulator, there's a new formula that's going to be created to make sure that they are adequately and properly funded. So there's going to be enhancements in that area as far as the work of the
Mr. Chassanet, I want you to I wanted to give the right of reply to anything Mr. Duncan said here about the regulator, because again, and my concern would be with a regulator such as what will be established here, how much legal authority would they have to enforce these best practices in the various territories, right? Are they going to be a paper tiger? Are they going to be a toothless tiger? That would be my concern, especially with respect to what Mr. Chassanet raised here. It does appear that there are serious accountability issues over there in St. Lucia, which I think, Mr. Duncan, you said that Grenada has tried to avoid. In terms of course, we have the contingency fund, we have the NTF, the National Transformation Fund. So we know the different parts within which those revenues are used for. Of course, there are also issues, of course, the underselling. That was an issue in Grenada in respect of how that was treated with. And again, I think...
Kellon, Grenada might be, I'm not saying we're the only one, but might be the only jurisdiction on record to suspend a developer for 90 days.
But how...
Hold on, Kellon.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The investigation was thoroughly done. In fact, it went beyond 90 days because we were still getting information upon the 90th day to resolve the issue. So we do those things. And I'm saying that it is out of a genuine need to make sure that the space is respected, that the space is a dignified space, is a space where we know abuse is, if identified, dealt with, over time. So we did that. And there's a lot of work that we continue to do to improve the space. We needed no regulator to tell us, hey, these are credible allegations, investigate, substantiate, and resolve. No regulator was needed.
Mr. Chassanet, I want to give you a right to reply, and then I'll bring back Brian here. Yes.
So I want to bring in the fact that I'm a regionalist, and I absolutely welcome the direction of the regulator. And to answer your question, if you read the act there's no may in it. There shall.
Yes.
And the regulator is being given incredible autonomy. And I think that this is great because the OACS needs to deepen its integration. And that we have to have the idea where we are giving up some sovereignty, but the benefit to it is that we're getting a stronger administrator. And think of if we had a singular Ministry of Health, a singular Ministry of Education, and then we had departments of health and departments of education in our own country. We have to deepen our integration. And I think that this regulation is a move in the right direction. And hopefully it will be emulated, if it is successful, in other areas within the OACS. So let me say that. Mm-hmm. The second thing I want to bring up is that it is not just sufficient, Richard, to say that there was a problem. The fact is, if somebody obtained their passport illegally, what was the price? Were those persons' passports taken away from them? And if they were not taken away from them, were they given an opportunity then to pay the right amount of money? And if in fact, on something like this, that somebody did something as egregious as cheating the state, I don't think that they should be there, period. I mean, this is probably one of the greater sins that someone can do because we're dealing with our sovereignty, our passports, our national heritage. And so I'm not, if the 90-day investigation found out that in fact that they were exercising or discounting, then telling them, hey, I caught you, don't do it again, in my humble opinion, that's just my opinion, is not enough. The third thing I want to bring up...
Alan, before you go off, let me clear the record that after the 90 plus days, we found no such things. The key thing that we found was what we call owner financing. That was another aspect of the program that we felt was unjustified. What we call owner financing. That was the issue that we...
So let me, I wasn't going to go there, so let me go there. In St. Lucia, and as in some of the other countries, and I don't know, Kellen, if you're familiar with the owner financing package.
No, I'm not.
So in essence, the developer, you want to be able to be a citizen. It's $200,000. The developer says to you, you can pay me $80,000, and I will lend you the money to make up the difference. Now, here's the fallacy. You, Kellen, should have been the one transferring the money to the escrow account so that there can be accountability. But instead, you're paying the $80,000 to the developer. The developer then is putting the $200,000 into the escrow account. But the developer is also a co-signature on the escrow account. And he's simply withdrawing the money and paying back himself. So in essence, it's a Ponzi scheme. The only way to be able to prevent that is if the state is actually auditing the escrow account to make sure that whatever withdrawals are being made are going directly to the development of the state. Now, that is discounting. So it means that the person, when you write to that individual and ask him, how much money did you pay for your passport? He's going to say 80,000. And sadly, there are examples, i.e. in the case of St. Kitts, where the developer winked at you, Kellen, and said, you have to pay me back the money. And he never does. Or the scheme is to say, you give me the 80,000, I will give you a credit of 200,000. And as the development comes on scheme, I will use whatever returns you were supposed to get to pay back the difference. This is unacceptable. That is why.
Yes, Brian, one second. Yes, let Alan finish and then Richard.
And this is why the regulations are saying can't do it. No financing schemes, period. But the point is that if you found somebody participating in that, the argument can be, well, I caught you now. I'm saying to you, you cannot use it moving forward. But what happens to the individuals that did that? Were they made to pay up the difference in the money? and what changes were made to the escrow account. So in the case of the escrow account in St. Lucia, I can speak to that, we have no sight of it. There's never been a public pronouncement as to how much money is in the escrow account. There's never been a proper audit. It's not included in the audit of the CIP unit. And so no one knows how much money was made in. So if in fact I give you 6,000 citizenship or application forms, that has a value, a street value of $1.2 billion. By letting us know how much money is in the account will satisfy us, at least the person's paid roughly how much you were supposed to pay. That information has never been provided. And one last thing before you come in, Richard. In this last budget debate, which ended on Friday, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, revealed to us that $65 million was transferred from the CIP unit to the consolidated account. No problem. $25 million was transferred to our hospital. I have no issues. $15 million was transferred to our water authority. No issues. And then he said $110 million was transferred, and I've now found out, to what's called the SSDF, the Social Development Fund, which is a statutory body, in order to do social development programs and infrastructure development. On the surface of it, seems pretty tame. We were in an election year. No point did the government say that they had a $110 million stimulus program. At no point. None. At no point was I approached as an MP to say the government of St. Lucia has $110 million to do social development programs, social assistance, and infrastructure. And that here's the process of application. We have a situation where the head of the SSDF is a gentleman who was a former candidate for the Labour Party. And we're only now finding out this after the fact. The elections in St. Lucia was a 10,000 vote swing. So that's 5,000 people who would have voted for us previously, this time voted for the Labour Party. 5,000, for simple math, into $110 million, just to give us a perspective, is $22,000 per person. If you say that they targeted 10,000 people, that's $11,000 per person leading up to an election. And we're only finding it out after the fact. This is why it is so important that the funds of the CIP unit be very well managed and that there has to be full transparency. So like you have, what is it called? The National Economic Fund? Is that what you all call it?
The National Transformation Fund. Yeah.
In our case, ours was a National Economic Fund. When this government came into office, they amended the legislation or the act for the National Economic Fund that it was any project that cabinet approved. So in essence, the board was made redundant. That entity is also supposed to provide an annual audited report. In 5 years, there's been no audits. Nobody knows where this money is going. Nobody knows how much money is being spent. And I can say it, I'm a big man. I lost my election. I would like to think I lost my election fair and square. But now I'm finding out 110 million. When we were in the middle of the election, people were getting food vouchers. People were getting building materials. People were getting short-term contracts. And none of us knew that this was coming from the SSDF. This is the danger with CIP. Not only is it a danger to the borders of our partners, and remember, Martinique and Guadeloupe are here in the region. That's Europe.
And they're different. Yeah, they are part of the EU. Yes, I never thought of that.
So we're 15 miles away. So if people are even coming into St. Lucia and then easily are being smuggled into Europe, we're a threat. And we have to understand that CIP is like a pharmaceutical knife. It can cut for the good and it can cut for the bad. And what we have to do is to minimize those things. And the minimum is to be able to put transparency and accountability and to fully appreciate the meaning of this money. This money is our money. This is sovereign money that we're getting in advance. We are leveraging our citizenship on moving forward. And I think that the Europeans and the Americans in particular are now saying to us, hey, and I want to say this, and what I'm going to say to you is 100% factual. Those persons who believe that the Americans are going to stop at what they have done right now, take that from your mind. I know that information is continuously being provided to the authorities in the Justice Department, and particularly to the Attorney General in the US, as to what is not happening in the Caribbean. And if you see that they've taken what action they have on Venezuela, the action they're now taking on Cuba, the action they're taking on Iran, of which they consider to be their threats, they are treating us right now because of the lack of movement, the lack of sincerity in what we're doing. And there are continual, I think, repercussions to be had very soon.
Okay. Mr. Duncan, yes, Mr. Duncan, you wanted to pick up on what Mr. Chastney said, and Brian, we will bring you back. We'll bring you back, I promise. But
yeah, I think the main thing is that the CBI programs operate differently across the islands, and therefore the problems and the complexity that St. Lucia has, we don't. So I feel it, for the St. Lucia situation, and I'm not too sure if the regulator can go as far as to see how it is, some of the issues that Alan alluded to can and should be resolved. And that's why I'm saying the regulator sets minimum standards. You, as a jurisdiction, need to improve things on your own to achieve what Alan is saying, the transparency, the consistency, the disclosure. That's on us, as individual jurisdictions. So I just want to put that in for what it is worth. And context, to come back to the point of the suspension that we did back then, the matter has been resolved to our complete and total satisfaction. So I just want to put that on record for Alan.
Yes. Quickly, Alan, and I'll get to Brian. Yes, quickly, please.
There's a bigger issue here.
Yes.
There's a bigger issue at play here. And Duncan needs to appreciate this. We are all part of CARICOM. And while CARICOM does not enjoy the same level of freedom of movement that we have within the OECS, there is a freedom of movement. And I can say to you, I genuinely believe that there are some CARICOM leaders now that are looking at what's going on. When I had a discussion, because one of the prime ministers called me to, and I said, well, in the OECS, we're talking about in the last 10 years, probably close to 120,000 new persons that have come in. And that all those persons would enjoy the same rights as we do in terms of accessing CARICOM. CARICOM also, each of those individual countries, the bigger countries, have ministers of security. And those ministers of security are now being briefed by, and thank you for the correction, GRCC, right? As to what is taking place. And it's not a pretty picture. And so I would say to Duncan that I get it. We could isolate ourselves in believing that if we run our shop clean, that it's not going to have an effect on us. But unfortunately, we're all being branded together. And they all have implications. If Dominica continues to sell at a discounted price, or anybody else does, it has a significant impact on where we're going. So the numbers of applications to St. Lucia, you would know this, Richard, have dwindled significantly since we lost the British visa. And the same thing has happened to Dominica. And there's now a threat on the Europeans. So our CIP programs are in significant jeopardy, notwithstanding anyone individually might be doing it right. But I think, and I applaud you, if in fact you are providing a regular audited update on the escrow account, and the escrow account is reconciling with the applications and is also reconciling with the development.
I think, yes.
because you're the only one. Nobody else is doing that.
Yes, Brian, you've been patiently waiting, sir.
itching.
Yes. We are from St. David's. We are patient people. So go ahead, please. Jumping on the question of the regulation here, please. Yes.
I'm sorry to correct you, but I am looking at your website right now, and there is no first quarter data on your website. So please, could you update your website ASAP? I'd love to see the first quarter data.
No, well, Brian, I'm not sure if you're looking at the same website that I'm looking at.
Well, it says IMA Grenada. I don't know.
How about both of you send me the links to what you have and let me compare the notes? Could you send that in the chat, please?
Yeah, Brian,
yes.
First quarter data is there.
Oh, good. Well, I look forward to seeing that. Now, another point that you made about the suspension of Hang Seng. It's a slap on the wrist. Come on, let's face it. They never stopped construction. Construction continued throughout. It was a 90-day break, yes, but it's a slap on the wrist. And you could do no more, because what else are you going to do? Are you going to stop the project? You're going to cancel there? That's the problem with these things. It's too big to fail. So yes, they could do something, which in other cases might have called for a total suspension and struck off. But no, well, you've already got 18 stories built. What are they going to do? Stop it? And this goes back to the whole problem of the mega project.
Yeah, but Brian, just to correct you, what we stopped during the 90+ days was the receipt of applications.
Yes, I know.
No, so again,
Brian,
if they have monies in the escrow account, and one of the things that we encourage and would in the future insist that a developer must first have his financing secured or access to financing to do the project. You cannot wait until you sell citizenship units to do a project. We know that. So they would have had monies in the escrow account and to continue the project while we suspended processing. So that was the issue there. So that suspension was in fact done.
Okay.
Until we got to the bottom of it. So Brian, let us take it, as you would like to say, in methodical, incremental phases. Just want to stick that in there. Thanks.
Okay. So are you telling me that Hang Seng have got the $2.9 billion in total funding that they need for the whole project? They have not. I can guarantee you that.
No, I'm not telling you that at all. I'm telling you that access to financing is key.
Yes, but what is access to financing? I have researched Hang Seng. They've never done anything like this before.
Brian, let us not get down into that quagmire. Let us go on to talk about the regulatory issue here.
We're talking about transparency, right? Transparency is also equal to accounting, so that we, the people, can know where our patrimony is going. Why does IMA require and receive audited accounts every year from its approved developers? Is that part of your process?
No, it's not part of our process, nor is it part of the law, nor do I think it's part of the regulations that are at play. Hold on, maybe it could come along the way. Remember, the space is evolving, it's mutating, so let's put it in the parking lot.
But as a financial person yourself, don't you think that is a real lack of transparency?
Brian, let us not frame your concerns as questions. Let us frame your concerns in a declaratory manner.
Okay,
I don't want to get professorial here, but
I declare that part of the regulations should be that every year approved CBI developers submit audited financial accounts to the government, which are then made public. That's what I want.
No problem. We hear you, Brian.
Another thing I want is that what I don't understand is the real estate option. This is what, on a fundamental level, I don't understand the concept that we are selling our national patrimony, we are selling our citizenship and giving money, not lending, not investing, but giving money to private, largely foreign developers to basically do what they want. How much money has Mount Hartman Group received from CBI? And what have they done? I can guarantee you there is a mismatch. And because we don't have audited accounts, we don't know. So what I'm saying is, we need to have transparency. We need to have audited accounts to see where this money goes. We have given $800 million to private foreign developers, one or two locals, but 90% private foreign developers. And we have no idea where that money went, what it was spent on, what we got for our money. I don't know how much money has gone into Mount Hartman, but I can tell you that we've gotten nothing from it. And I'm going to, again, continue with my questions about the transparency that we have none of it. We need to know where the money goes to these groups. How much money has gone to Hang Seng? How much money has gone to the Mount Hartman group? And what do we have to show for it? Without audits, we're just singing in the wind. We need to tighten up our financial transparency and accounting so that we, the people, can know where the money from our passports have gone. As I said, we've already sold the equivalent of 13% of Grenada's population to CBI. And make it clear, when we sell a CBI, when we sell a passport, their children also are eligible to become Grenadians. So in addition to the 13,000 now who have passports, we have to look at the next few generations and what demographic impact they will have. And I hope we get to this before the end of the show.
And that would be the last issue, yes. But Richard, please.
Before you go on, though, so Brian has a number of issues, and the question is whether or not the regulatory authorities and the regulations that are being, well, not even contemplated as currently drawn, and whether or not the standards that are going to set will capture those things, I cannot say with certainty. So, Brian, you're looking at some, again, further mutation of the program, and those things, I'm sure, can be given consideration. No issue there at all.
Yes, and of course, those are the issues. In the context of the regulation, I would like to see, again, what those bylaws are going to look like. But gentlemen, this, again, as one viewer said, this has been a very rich conversation, I think, here. But the last issue that we want to raise here, and again, that has to do with the sort of the demographic implications of the CBI program in Grenada and the OECS. Of course, it's now framed as investment migration. That is what it is, right? But the reality is, based on the data that we have, we do have a number of thousands of citizens. I believe, Brand, what was the data? What did your research? 13,000
new Grenadian citizens on the CBI.
And that is only in the context of Grenada. I don't know what the numbers are in St. Lucia, for example, what the numbers are going to be in the other jurisdictions. But let us talk about, of course, and we have to also contextualize this way, because we have been complaining for many years, gentlemen, that we have a population time bomb in the Caribbean. Yes, we have a population time bomb. We have social security systems that are stressed because of that population time bomb, the population decline time bomb. So again, perhaps I am being optimistic, Pollyannish here, but wouldn't that demographic explosion in the context of CBI be a good thing for the OECS in respect of replenishing its population in a way that perhaps the indigenous population is not able to do? And the data bears that out. Mr. Chassenay, let's begin with you on that question, sir.
It's about a plan.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, and I think that the facts are there to support my argument, we just threw out a big net rather than being very specific as to which ponds we wanted to fish in. So we have a mismatch, and that when you look at the number of persons from China, from Iran, and from Middle Eastern countries, etc., which now has caused part of the problem, because the West is at war with the East, and the benefits that we obtain from the West that we've taken for granted now are being reviewed by the West. And if we don't make a choice, then it's going to be a problem. And unfortunately, we don't have the military or the economic power to fight the West. We can either say, okay, I don't want to be part of the West anymore, and I'm going to join the East. And are we willing to give up those benefits that we're getting in the West at this current moment? Our programs can be better tailor-made once we understand where we want to go, and to be very concentrated. And I want to go back to this. I am of the firm belief, I've been on your show multiple times, I've said the same thing. The OECS should have one CIP program. One. Because the competition between the individual countries, and what Richard has said is that he can account for Grenada, but we are being seen as one, and whatever the ills are in one are being translated to the other. So we should have one program, and that the monies are pulled together to support the development plans of our country. And we should treat this as free capital and building up a sovereign wealth fund for ourselves in the OECS. I don't believe that these programs will survive once they're competing against each other. And to your point, if we have a singular program as to then spend the money to determine where do we believe we should be targeting, which are the nationalities that can benefit from the access we have into these Western markets, Grenada even being better, and you still have the EB5 that you have. That's a significant advantage that you guys have. But the point is, if we look collectively and have a clear strategy as to where we're going and why we're going into those places, and instead of now fishing with a net and using price in order to lure people, and in the absence of price, we're bringing in developers that see a great opportunity of being able to build a hotel for free. And in some cases, monies are being made available to pay for the operations of those hotels. Anybody would want to do that deal. And when you bring a developer from a particular region, their bias is going to be on that region.
Absolutely. Richard?
On the question of the demographics.
Yes.
Well, I think the key, or the way we are seeing it at the CBI committee, these are high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals with resources, professions, businesses, and so forth. So engaging what we call the CBI diaspora is a key part of our strategy. How can we get these Grenadians to engage in and invest in additional opportunities on island, even if they do not reside permanently? So that CBI diaspora for us is a key part of unlocking the further potential of the...
When you say CBI diaspora, who are you referencing here?
So with the graph you have on the screen, we have, if you aggregate it, maybe about 13,000 such persons. These are the people I'm referring to as the CBI diaspora. These 13,000 Grenadians made so by virtue of investment.
I see. Okay.
Right? So I'm saying if, for example, one of these persons has a basketball manufacturing enterprise, I would not want a donation for a basketball for every secondary school child in Grenada. What I would
donation of cricket bats.
No, I would want them to relocate a logistics center or a manufacturing hub on the island, or the what did I say? The logistics scheduling programmers, the call centers, whatever they have as part of the business ecosystem. I would like some of that to be relocated in Grenada. I don't need the basketballs. That is how I see engaging the diaspora in the CBI.
In that, okay, great, excellent.
If I can just
yes, Alan, just add
Second.
quickly. Yes,
That if in fact the facts are coming out that application is more than one person, and that in fact we are selling individual citizenships for as low as $60,000, they have become, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend anybody, disposable investments. Persons who are looking to get out of their regions, that's a very cheap price to pay. If I don't have to apply for a visa and I can get on a plane, and once I get on the plane, then I can apply for political asylum.
In Europe or somewhere.
So then this is where this, by having one program, that maybe we can start charging a higher price, have a greater value for our own citizenship. And therefore, I think that what Richard is proposing can work. But I applaud that notwithstanding that, you have to still try. Because even if you get 2 or 3 out of the 13,000, it could make a significant difference. But going on forward to make sure the quality of the people that we're bringing in and that we're not being used, these are the things. So I think that what we should be doing, honestly, Kellen, is taking the advice from the US and the British and the Europeans to heart and say, okay, clearly we didn't look at it from the perspective that our border is your border. And we need to now look at it from that perspective that we're not creating a threat. But that threat to you would have also been a threat to me. And maybe I didn't take that into significant consideration. And now that I have to do that. So we have to use this evidence to mutate, as Richard has said, but mutate very, very fast. And whatever we need an audit of the persons who have been approved in the past and persons who are a risk, we have to cut. Otherwise, we're not going to be credible in the eyes of our partners.
Brian?
Richard, be careful what you ask for with regarding to CBI people coming here to live. CBI people, CBI citizens and Grenada citizens are not the same. CBI citizens are very wealthy. Anybody who can pay $85,000 per passport is not poor. Are we ready for the impact of 10,000 CBI people deciding, oh, let me go and move to Grenada. Let me buy property in Southern Georgia. Are we prepared for if there's a revolution in Nigeria, in one of our major countries, CBI markets, and 5,000 of them, sure, I'm getting out of here, I'm going to Grenada, I got this passport. Are we ready for the fact that their children will also be Grenadians? We're going into this thing blindfold. We need to have, Alan, we need to have a plan, which is what we don't have. And it's just being ad hoc. If there was a big boom in 23-24 due to the Russian-Ukraine war, where we did not stop selling when everybody else stopped selling. To me, that was shameful, right? Now, are we prepared for another boom for the Iran conflict? Are we prepared for another boom from the next conflict and the next conflict and the next conflict? We've only had CBI for 10 years, and already we've sold 13,000 passports. What's going to be the situation in another 10 years? What's going to be the situation when they outnumber us? Are we ready for the concept of a CBI political party? Because they can all vote. When you get your citizenship documents, you get your voter registration forms. They and their children can all vote in Grenadian elections. We're not ready for that. We haven't thought about this. We're going into this thing blindfolded, and we need to have a serious look at the implications of it.
Okay, so Brian, thanks for that point that you made about the demographics and what have you not. I've heard those arguments before. I think the numbers in St. Kitts actually haven't started since I think 1987. It's way past ours and probably way past their population. But having said that, I want to correct you for the record and to take great offense to what you describe as the shameful act of selling citizenships in the market in respect of the USS, not USS, but the Russia. Hold on.
Russia. Hold on. Brian, let him finish.
So we in Grenada had, with our other partners and the US, 6 what we call US CBI principles to adhere to, and we are adhering to them. One of them was the discontinuation of the sale of citizenship to the Russian and Belarusian. Grenada put its hand up. We had a backlog before the agreement came into being, and we were allowed to March 31st to dispose of that. Right? So I just want to make it very clear, Brad, that this was not something that was done in a disgraceful, shameful way or whatever. It was done quite openly with the understanding and nod of the authorities, and that is what the records show.
But did we not continue after other OECS countries stopped taking applications?
No, we did not.
The application backlog.
No, we did not. Thank you very much. We did not.
Yes.
If I can maybe.
Yes, Mr. Chastany, quickly. Yes, please. Because we do have to get to the next segment. Yes, but go ahead, please, Alan.
Simply saying no to Russians, in my opinion, is acquiescing on our sovereignty. Okay.
Alan,
wait a second. And this is where we didn't think out of the box. And this is where the collective bringing of minds together could have maybe resolved it. How did Canada resolve the problem? Canada said, in order to be able to get your visa waiver, you had to have a US visa. So if it was the Americans and the Europeans who were the greatest concern about the Russians, I would have put it back on them. I would not accept any Russian who did not have a visa to either Europe or America. But if you were a Russian, because Grenada got a lot of Russians who were living in the States, who were living in the UK, and because of what was going on, applied. Now, I'm going to say to you, if in fact that America and Europe had already approved them to come into their countries, then a certain level of due diligence would have been done. Now, I'm saying this because I want to make it clear. I am not anti-CIP, but I think that the way that we're managing CIP, Brian has brought up some very important issues with regards to real estate. What we did in St. Lucia, and I regret that I did not stay with that plan, is that we changed it around, that we asked people who wanted to come in to do a hotel development in our country to make the investment into our donation program, into our core program. And we put monies aside into our investment company that would have lent them money over a 20, 30-year period at an interest rate. So it means that the principal amount of the CIP money that was going in remained an asset of the state. And if in fact the project failed, it gave the state now the ability to be able to take back the asset. Giving somebody 30-year money at low interest rates is enough of an incentive in order to be able to get people in. And if we did it that way, Brian, maybe now some of these projects would not be so outlandish because they would have had to live within a certain a frame in order to be able to get a return. So and I think that that's why we should be welcoming the pushback that we're getting, take it seriously. And again, as Richard said, we must mutate, okay? And I just don't think that we're doing that. And I just want to say, Richard, it is imperative that all of the OACS countries are being kept to the same standard. I think it is long overdue. And I'm going to just say to you, as a former prime minister of St. Lucia, it is the oldest trick in the book. It's procrastination. So while we are waiting for the regulator to be appointed, Rome is burning. In the case of St. Lucia, they continue to commit the same ills that have gotten us in the problem in the first place. And nobody's saying anything. And this is wrong. This is a very important program. Canada built its infrastructure on CIP. America has built what it is today on immigration. So
well, and to be fair, Mr. Shaston, they also have their CIP program as well.
Of course.
Right? You know, and so sometimes I just find it hypocritical that the US is talking about, or Europe is talking about, well, the US in particular, they reference what we're doing as small sovereign post-colonial states who are really trying to carve our own development, but they have their own programs as well. And sometimes I find it hypocritical.
No. I blame our leaders. Because instead of changing and understanding what is being said. So as I said to you, you tell me I can't bring Russians. Well, I will accept Russians that have US visas and European visas. What could you tell me? You've already accepted those persons. Okay. Right. So it's not everything that you have to accept, but they are, I'm going to say this out categorically. They are some of the leaders in this region that want to maintain their sovereignty. And anytime there's an attack on their sovereignty, okay, they use the same thing. Oh, well, they do it. Well, they've given you the reasons and the concerns that they have. It is up to you to amend your policies and your strategy, not giving up your sovereignty, but to address it. But the fact is that people want to have their cake and they want to eat it. And the reality is the consequence of all of this is on the people of our countries who are going to be denied access, who are going to be left with white elephants, and nothing to show at the end of the day.
Yes. Yes, Richard, quickly, and then I do want to get to a viewer comment. Yes, go ahead, please. Yes.
So Alan made a very important point, We run some statistics on the Grenada program, and up to 50% of the applicants for the period from last year to January this year, up to 50%, had either a visa to the US, the UK, or the Shenzhen area, in the Grenada program, to Alan's point. So these are...
But 50% didn't.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, what if half do? What if we were looking at the Russians, for example, and they already had visas to those programs, they would have been able to enter. So I just buttress in your point to say we could be smarter and using the data available to us now. Your point, I think, is correct as a way forward to say, guys, can we relax this zero tolerance for Russians, but have a tolerance for Russians who already have visas
and to protect our sovereignty, so it's not perceived that we're being told what to do. What we're being told is that there's a problem, and we need to kind of a solution to that problem. And as I said to you, I watched Canada. Canada didn't want to vet everybody again, so they just said, look, anybody who has a U.S. visa can now apply for the exemption. If you don't have a U.S. visa, you have to go through the normal process.
You have to go through the normal process. Yes. Gentlemen, a very important point, and then we'll take a break and then come back for closing comments. And then we have to get, I do apologize to my other guests who have been waiting here on the Woodford issue that we're going to deal with. But Craig is saying when CBI come here, meaning to Grenada, they buy more, they want more, and they can afford what natives cannot. Local banks is not issuing loans to citizens that does not have capital. Brand has a point. And then another viewer has articulated the view that really what the CBI CIP programs does is that they engage in sort of a gentrification that we're seeing here. I've lost, there's so many comments. But let us speak to that issue, Brian and gentlemen. How do we again balance what the investment migration is attempting to do in our local economies with the ability of indigenous OECS citizens, Grenadian citizens, to be able to access those same things? So for example, in the context of land purchase in Grenada, now one might argue that yes, market forces would determine the price of land and whatnot. But at the same time, there is a feeling that, with those high net worth individuals coming in, that Grenadians are priced out of the ability to buy even a quarter of an acre of land. So Brian, let's get your thoughts on that issue.
Well, you've just said it there. I mean, the CBI citizens are, by a factor of probably 10, more wealthier than the average Grenadian citizen. So when they want to come here and buy land, it's not like we having to buy land and scratch around and so on and so forth. They just buy land. So, and again, we have to look at the future. We're creating something that will last for eternity. We're creating new citizens and their children, and even their children's children in certain circumstances. We've not thought through this properly. We've really not thought this through. And the other thing is regarding investment. Sorry, this is, again, Grenadian investors versus CBI investors. Now the only game in town is CBI. In the old days, the good old days of project financing, people like Leon Taylor and the Fieldings and the Spice Island, so on, they built indigenously owned hotels and ran them. Now, everything is $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Locals are being priced out of A, the real estate market, and B, the investment market. And this is my issue about CBI and the skewing of market. CBI is resulting in money going to projects which otherwise would not have happened because it would not pass the due diligence. And what I'm saying is, can you imagine, go back in time, if you went to Geary and Bishop and said to them, Uncle, we have a plan. We're going to sell passports and get a lot of money. Oh, great. What are we going to do with the money? Oh, we're going to give it to foreigners to build hotels. What? You crazy? Why we should get every dollar that we get from the sale of our national patrimony, and I keep stressing this, our citizenship should go to the National Transformation Fund. You want to buy passports? You want to build a hotel? Sure, you can sell passports. The money goes to the NTF. You want to build a hotel? The NTF will lend you the money. Or invest in shares in your hotel and get some return. But we, the Grenadian people, get no return from the money, from the $800 million that has gone to the private sector development. We, A, have no clue what it went for because we don't get any audited accounts to see where the money actually went. And B, we don't own anything. We're giving it to foreign investors to build and own hotels. So Six Senses, Grenada has no ownership interest in Six Senses, nor the other one they're building, nor any of these CBI projects which are being, built right now, because we have no economic interest in it. If we had a national transformation fund or sovereign wealth fund that all this money went into, Imagine the things that we could have done. We are borrowing $250 million. Yes, CBI put in $25 million into that, but we're borrowing, say, $225 million to complete Project Polaris. If all the money had gone into the NTF instead of this waste of money and ugly things up at Lever and whatever else, we could have built the hospital and had change left over. But no, we're borrowing money when we are. It's insane. We're getting money on this side, we're giving it away on this side, and then we're borrowing it again on this side. Tell me how this makes any sense whatsoever.
Yes, the demographic question, Richard.
Well, I don't know that I could say much more besides what I've said in terms of leveraging the
leverage. Of course, yes, you did. Yes, Mr. Chassanet, quickly on that point.
Look, I just wanted to say what Brian just said is exactly what the issue at hand is. And let's face it, that when we got into CIP, in a lot of ways, it was to help fill a hole in government's budgets. And so if you see the slow progression, the monies were going primarily into the economic fund and being used to help support government. Now, the question is, should you use this money to pay recurrent expenditure? There's a strong argument against it. St. Kitts and Dominica's governments are literally built on CIP revenues coming in, which are not long-term guaranteed. And you see St. Kitts significant contractions in the economy, as well as an increase in their overall deficits, because the amount of money that was coming in originally is not. So I'm a believer that the money should be going to reduce the debt of a country, and also to be able to pay for capital projects like hospitals, like major roads, like water. These things are very difficult to get a return on them. You have to borrow concessionary funds, and certainly if you free up that money and it can go into other things, it would be a wise thing to do. In terms of demographics, he's 100% correct. Now that we're going into the age of the real estate developments, and those numbers now have increased significantly, it can't be under the same framework that we had before. And it's just common sense. Now that we're seeing that, we must mutate, I'm going to use Richard's term, very quickly, right, to make that adjustment. Because otherwise, if we don't make the adjustment, then it means that we had that planned all along. I want to say this. What is the GDP of Grenada?
Well, 1.4 billion.
1.4 billion US.
1.4 billion. Give me a second. 1.4 billion. Okay. And what is the square footage of Grenada?
133 square miles. Brian, you should know that, man. Come on. I'm just kidding. You should know that.
So that means that means that every square mile in Grenada is generating $9.7 million of revenue. Okay, let me put that in perspective. Aruba is $40 million per square mile. Barbados is 35 million. Cayman Islands is 150 million. Bahamas, Nassau, is almost 200 million. And the country that we hate to compare ourselves to, but I do because St. Lucia and Singapore are exactly the same physical size, is $1.5 billion of output per square mile. The question is, what are the industries that are going to allow us to expand? So if you take Aruba, why is Aruba at 40? Aruba has 15,000 hotel rooms. How many hotel rooms does Grenada have?
Depends what you call a hotel.
that I don't know.
Sorry? Well,
about 2,000 to 2,500, something
about
like
2,000, correct. Okay? That's not going to cut it. You can't get enough airlift. You can't create enough critical mass in anything. And so
2,500 hotel rooms. Yes, that's
okay.
What it is. Yeah.
All right. It's not enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
now,
people rarely tell me that they can't get a flight to Grenada when they want to come for a holiday. We keep talking about airlift, but it's very rare that people can't get here.
And your airlift is biased because of the hospital, the university, sorry, that's generating a greater demand.
Yes.
In the absence of the university, 2,500 rooms, guys, cannot cut it. Now, the question is, I say to you, not my number, I'm just telling you as a person been involved in the tourism industry, you need minimum 5,000 rooms. Ideally, Grenada probably needs 10,000 hotel rooms. All right. That's why I'm saying to you need a plan. And if you're going to bring 10,000 hotel rooms, what are the ones that generate the greatest level of economic impact? So you're using the example of a Spice Island, use the example of a Sandals. Both of them bring different things. Sandals is going to employ probably more people per room, and is going to sell and run a very high occupancy and drive certain numbers. Spice Island, right? Probably there's more added value in terms of what they're going to be able to bring on a per room basis. There are numbers that you can do to analyze. That's why a plan is 100% required first, and then determine how you're going to use the CIP plan in order to further your plan forward. So the question is it just a matter of hotel rooms, or is it rooms that are going to generate occupancy and add significant value to Grenada? Is it in keeping with what brand Grenada is all about? And therefore, it'll be easier for Richard to justify any product because he now knows where it fits in the scheme of what you want to be able to do. So I would just say to you, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's still time to salvage the CIP program, but the governments must act with haste and with responsibility. It is without question that there should be a singular program. Nobody can convince me otherwise. And the regulator is an incredible move in the first place. And Killen, you spoke about how draconian the legislation is. Because in essence, it is creating a singular unit. But we need to now figure out, because there are a lot of things that we share in common. And I want to say this too, because there's an overall arching goal here. I got caught up in a controversy about 6 or 8 months ago when I made the comment that the OECS should pull out of CARICOM.
And your colleague in St. Vincent said the same thing, Dr. Raul Gonzalez, too. Yes.
For different reasons.
For different reasons, of course, yes.
And I accept that. And he would appreciate I say that, okay?
Yes.
That I said that. In nobody played what I said afterwards. We should pull out of CARICOM to renegotiate our position in CARICOM as the OECS.
Single block.
Not as individual countries.
Single block, yeah.
Okay? Now, why? Collectively, we are $10 billion GDP and we're 800,000. Make a comparison to Barbados. Barbados is a $4.5 billion GDP with 280,000, right? So we're already collectively in a better position than Barbados. We have a trade deficit with every one of those CARICOM countries. So when we go as the OECS to negotiate with Jamaica, we're going to get a better deal. Jamaicans need the OECS. And for those persons who tell me, oh, y'all are too small, it's for that reason. We are continuously being classified as lesser developed countries. If in fact we start valuing what we have as the OECS, and we then have the resources to strengthen so that the $10 billion GDP that we have, we should be able to double it or triple it. When you talk about that now and increase our own populations, the value that we bring, the leverage that we now have to negotiate better deals for ourselves is substantial. And that's where CIP plays a role in helping to further whatever that development is to improve the economies of our country, improve the quality of governance in our countries, and improve the quality and the sustainability of our services. But it requires a plan, and that we must value ourselves. I have no time for CARICOM. From 1972, CARICOM has done nothing to integrate itself. And it's a simple question, Kellen. Do you believe that Trinidad is going to give up its own currency and its central bank?
No.
Do you believe that Guyana is going to do that?
Jamaica is not going to do that either.
So guess what? We don't have to go any further. Okay, gentlemen, we will now deal with y'all individually because you have agreed to be individual. We can still have an entity called CARICOM where we can share ideas and see what we become in common. But this idea that CARICOM is ultimately going to be what what was it called when we had everybody is one.
The Federation.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
That's not happening. That's done. That boat has sailed. Okay. And so I say this in the context because CIP is an opportunity, if we manage it properly, to generate a substantial amount of resources, to Brian's point, to further our development cost effectively. But the money must be controlled by the citizens and the state. And there is a flaw in the real estate program that we must address, and we're not doing that right now.
Gentlemen, we are going to come up for air. We're going to come up for air because we do have to get, and we really went over time on this, but I thought that the information here, as borne out by some of the comments from our viewers, was extremely rich. And there is a call for you three gentlemen to come back, perhaps after the regulator is set up. We can come back, gentlemen. Do we have a commitment here that we come back after the body is set up? Come back and have another conversation.
Let me just say, in case they're having a hard time finding the regulator, I mean, I humbly offer my services.
Well, there you go. Okay, so gentlemen, we'll take a quick break, come back for closing comments. Stand by. Hi, everyone. The Bubb Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, we at one point we had over about 515 people on YouTube. Folks over on YouTube, please give us that like. Just hit like. No one knows that you will hit like. that data is not shared with us, but just hit like so that the algorithm can do its thing. Those of you over on Facebook, please do the same. Just hit like so that others can really engage with this very rich conversation that we had this morning, a very high level conversation that we had this morning. And I want to thank you, because I know, Mr. Duncan, you're traveling, and I know that you have some other commitments. So thank you, sir, for making yourself available. Mr. Shasta, I hope I did not cause you to run from church too early this morning. In fact, and I know that, as a parliamentarian, you have a lot of work to do as well. And Brad, I know you're happily retired, but I know that you're writing as well. You're still writing. So I'm looking forward to the next book that you will have published. So Mr. Chassanet, sir, over to you, sir, for some closing comments this morning.
Thank you. I assume that what Richard was saying is that in the case of Grenada, that you do publish information on your escrow account, and you do publish the number of individual citizens that are being approved. And that's a standard that we must do. And it's the absence of that kind of transparency in the other countries that is creating a problem. And I want us to be fully aware that we are our own problem. And the intensity of the US, the intensity of the British, who have now suspended visas from 2 countries, and what the looming threat of the Europeans, it's real. And that there are continual investigations, and this is not past us. the appointment of the regulator in the absence of implementation and accountability will lead to further suspensions of visa access and freedom of movement of our people into the European and Western world. And this is a real threat. And I think that we have to look at this thing from two sides. The candle is burning from both sides in terms of the visa and freedom of movement of our own people, as well as how the resources are used and are accounted for. That these are the two things that we must put our houses in order, stop using excuses, and represent the best interest of all of our citizens in this region. The future is bright if we embrace our own responsibility. And I really thank you for the opportunity of this show. And I want to thank the two panelists for their frankness.
Yes.
And that the fact is that there is more that we can achieve collectively together. And I really appreciate Richard's demeanor in recognizing that there are some problems. But I want to also defend him, is that he is not the solution to those problems. The public must put pressure on the governments to amend the legislation to hold Richard's hand to the fire. But he can only act within whatever regulations he currently has. And I want to say, Brian, I really applaud your interest. I'm hoping more citizens in Grenada, more citizens in St. Lucia will really try to understand this very complicated issue, but understand that these are their resources, because what we are leveraging is their patrimony. And isn't it ironic that persons are applying to our countries because of our visa-free access to certain Western countries? And we're now in jeopardy of losing those visa-free accesses.
Some serious food for thought to consider. Mr. Chasney, thank you so much. Mr. Duncan, sir, over to you, sir, for closing comments.
Yes, Kelowna, thank you for having me on. Again, I enjoy the discussion, the debate. I think that we have some very useful suggestions that we have placed on the parking lot.
Yes.
In the Grenada case, there's going to be a potential repeal and replacement of the Grenada legislation, not just to come in conformity with the regulator, but more so to further mutate the program, taking into account suggestions coming from our various stakeholders, Brian, first among equals, in that regard, because we believe that the program can be improved, can be sustained. And the international pressures are there, but it must not be that if things goes awry, it is our own doing. We must do our very best as people to develop, to use the word that is now becoming popular, mutate and sustain the program well into the future. And again, I want to thank, Alan himself. He did not play much of a political role. He's more like a statesman, a professional, and excellent discussion. And
absolutely, and that's why I thought he was a most fitting guest to join the panel this week.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Richard Duncan OB, and of course, Mr. Samuel. Over to you, sir, for some closing
Thank
comments.
you very much.
Brian, before you can, we still have a date with Kamal Shahada at range. Okay, we do. I believe he's watching this morning. So, Mr. Shahada, we have to get to you. We have to have a summit, sort of at range up there in Lasajes, my hometown. So, go ahead, Mr. Samuel.
Well, thank you very much. And again, what an interesting discussion this has been. Mr. Chastity, Mr. Duncan, it's been absolutely fascinating with this exchange of dialogue. And I think that we can all agree on a few things. The program can be improved, and I think it should be improved in terms of transparency. Just a few points I want to make. We should get all data on all of the 13,500 passports that have been issued. How many what are the nationalities? What are the breakdown? We need data on that. We need data on the flow of funds. We need data on the audited accounts of the CBI developers. How can we be giving this money to developers and get nothing in return? I mean, this is standard transparency 101. You don't just give people the money, you give them the money and hold them accountable for spending it properly. When we give $100 million to Hang Seng, we don't know what they do with it because we get no audited financial accounts. One other thing, two other things. As I said before, scrap the real estate auction, let all the money go to the government and we lend it to these developers. Under certain circumstances, we have a repayment schedule, etc. We get the money back and we put it into a sovereign wealth fund. Finally, can we have some design oversight here? Alan, you mentioned brand Grenada. Is that monstrosity? My two favorite words these days is monstrosity and carbuncle. Is that thing that is being built at Levra got anything to do with brand Grenada? Have you seen the designs that they're coming in with Mount Hartman, this wavy, nonsensical thing? These belong in China, not Grenada. They have nothing to do with pure Grenada. So please let us, the people, yourselves, IMA, whoever, have design oversight. When they come with some guitar-shaped hotel on Grand Anse Beach, does anybody have the capacity to say no? So basically, that's my final thing. Just in addition to all the other things, let us not build carbuncles.
Kellen, could you give me 1 minute if you don't mind?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Alan. Yes.
I heard you mention the name Range. And I want to say that, Range has been one of the few real estate developers that actually has fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yes. So the property that they built, the Hyatt that they built in St. Kitts, I think it's now an Intercontinental in Dominica.
Correct.
And the Sixth Sense. But when I was doing the development in St. Lucia, and we spun to the idea of lending them the money, Range was the first to the table. And we were well on our way. And the problem that happened was that we had only the idea of an economic fund, but the regulations had not been passed. And there was no way for me to transfer the money to the investment corporation to allow it to lend the money to him, and there was a delay. And as a result of it, we agreed to part ways, and we compensated him for the passports that he did sell, the citizenship program. We gave him a commission. We reimbursed him for the land that he had bought. He had paid, and we gave him back his money. And we also paid him compensation for the work that he had done, the drawings, the planning approvals, etc. So I just want to say that, Range has been a good partner, but that does not take away what Brian is saying. And maybe there's a better way of us moving forward. But certainly none of what we're talking about, Kellen, should be done without a very clear plan on our part. We should be using and we should be holding the handle of the knife, not always us holding the blade. And I think that in our anxiety...
The ones who facilitate, correct, yes.
Well, the anxiety that we had because of the debt problem that we had, we just rushed into this.
I think we lost Alan there. Yeah, I think...
Just wanted to add that.
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to add that.
Yes, absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. We do have to, of course, we're doing a marathon today. I guess I've turned into iShowSpeed, the streamer. Who, by the way, he's in Grenada. I don't know who this is. But it shows my age because I was speaking to some younger people, including my producer, and he was very excited. Of course, my producer is under 25. He's under 25 years old. It's like, you don't know who iShowSpeed is? I'm like, who? I have no clue. So they're very excited he's in Grenada today. So, okay. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you again for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody, take care.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
take good care. Viewers and listeners, we'll take one final break and come back for the final segment. Hi, everyone. The Bubb Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now, do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching. For those who are staying with us, we want to thank you. We know that we have gone over time, but definitely we have to get this segment in. And that has to do with the Reno Industrial Complex up there at Woodford and its, of course, its environmental impact. Now, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who is responsible for the, of course, he's the line minister responsible for the Planning and Development Authority, earlier this year approved a general development order giving permission to the Reno group of companies to construct a jetty at Woodford Bay and an asphalt plant at Woodford Village in St. John. Of course, this is an issue. This is a story that we covered. And of course, residents in the area expressed concern about the asphalt plant that is currently being constructed and being operationalized at Woodford in St. John. Now, published in the 24th December 2025 Government Gazette, the General Development Order was approved by Prime Minister Mitchell on the 22nd of December, subsequent to approval by Marlon Joseph, who is the Executive Secretary of the Planning and Development Authority, and Alan Gilbert, the Executive Officer of the PDA, on the 17th of December 2025. Now, activists and residents in the area are, however, arguing that the Planning and Development Authority approved this industrial complex and, of course, the adjoining jetty at the bay there without doing a proper environmental impact assessment study. Now, it must be noted that an EIA was done. And, of course, the basis of what appears to be whatever decision was made to proceed without at least acceding to what the EIA said is something that comes under scrutiny. Now, Prime Minister Mitchell was asked about this, the context of the EIA, and this is what he had to say in a press conference earlier this year.
Good morning. I'm with GBN. My name is Deidre Seeley. On the subject of the asphalt, in recent weeks, there have been some publications regarding the lack of an environmental impact assessment with regard to Reno's asphalt plant. From what I saw, there was basically approval was given without that assessment being done. Can you speak to that and how you might, if it is true, how you might mitigate issues like that with the other asphalt plants?
So I think, and I assume you're speaking about in Woodford. Sorry, I want to clarify, you're speaking about Woodford. Okay. All right, so we have to balance environmental impact assessments with the hard reality on the ground. And ideally, in each case where development should take place, the law, particularly for certain areas, if you're dealing with the coastal areas, environmentally sensitive areas, you want an environmental impact assessment to be done. Like so many other things in Grenada, we have capacity limitations. There are very few people available to do environmental impact assessments. And oftentimes, in our experience, it takes forever to get it done. I am aware that the contractor actually sought to and retained someone here to do an environmental impact assessment. I don't think they've actually gotten the report. Right? And as the minister responsible for infrastructure and under whose umbrella portfolio PDA also plans, I have to make a decision as to whether we simply wait forever to get this environmental impact assessment report, or whether, given the fact that in some instances we are facing almost national emergencies if we don't repair and renovate the roads and fix the bridges, whether in those circumstances I should not proceed to authorize for the commencement of the milling and the creation of the asphalt, obviously while trying to take steps to make sure that we can mitigate any potential fallout. I'm satisfied, based on the specifications of the plant, that it's an ultra-modern plant that has built-in environmental impact mitigation measures. And in those circumstances, because of the crisis, frankly, we're facing in terms of the state of the roads, would have proceeded to approve for the plant to, in fact, start operations pending this environmental impact assessment report.
So that was the Prime Minister's comments on the way that they are framing this. Of course, now, before we get into this segment, that is another segment we are working on. The government of Grenada was, in fact, taken to court to get a judicial review done by the Grenada land actors on this business of how the Planning and Development Authority proceeds with giving approvals for development projects in Grenada. And of course, in one of the cases, of course, the court agreed with the challenge that was brought against the government of Grenada, specific to the Planning and Development Authority. But two other points before we get to the segment. It must be noted that whenever these conversations come up, we always try to reach the Planning and Development Authority of Grenada. And the response that we have always received, from officials at planning is that they have to get approval from the board chairman before they can speak to us, or that the program happens at a time when Mr. Gilbert, for example, may be indisposed on a Sunday. I don't know, maybe he has religious obligations, not to discount his religious obligations. That is his right. But it has always been the case whenever I reach out to, for example, Miss Leslie, then she tells me to speak to someone else. And there has always been this sort of, passing us around like a cricket ball, right? Or a wind ball. And that's just the reality. The point is, we have attempted, as we always do in the interest of balance, to get the government's side of these issues on the program. And the last thing I would say before I bring in Ms. Henry and Ms. Davies on this is that this clip that we just played, for some reason we cannot find it on the Government Information Service website. I would like to know, and I'm requesting this of the press secretary and the director of information. I don't know who's the director of information now there. Why is it that that particular press conference was deleted? It reminded me of a time when the Government Information Service deleted that famous press conference when Calistro Faria pressed former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell on the relationship with his alleged ex-wife, or the relationship that he was having with another person. And that press conference deleted from the Government Information website. So it appears that, that there might be some, shall we say, quasi-censorship happening there. And that is not something that I think should happen. And as a journalist, I will call that out, irrespective of who is in office. I did it when the previous administration was there, and I will do it with this current administration, because that is, I stand by the courage of my journalistic convictions. So let me bring in Ms. Henry. Ms. Henry, thank you so much for your patience. This has been today's a long pants, shall we say. And Ms. Chris Davies, if you can turn your camera on, ma'am. But what we want to focus on today, ladies, is just the environmental impact that is currently occurring in respect of the approval given to Reno Construction to do the work of building that quarry, which is now, as I understand it, is morphed into something else totally. In addition to that jetty, I believe, down there in the adjoining community there at Halifax Bay, I believe it's called. So, ladies and gentlemen, ladies, let us first talk about what's happening up there at Woodford now in respect of, in the absence of this EIA. Obviously, an EIA, we know that an EIA was done, but in the absence of that EIA, can you talk about those concerns that Woodford residents continue to have, especially with respect to the environmental impact there?
Dr. Bob, can I correct you on the matter of the EIA being done?
Yes.
No
yes,
EIA was done, which is at the heart of the issue.
What was done? Yes, go ahead. What was done, please?
What was done is an environmental review. Sometimes it's called an environmental impact statement. Sometimes it's called an initial environmental evaluation. That was done by GECO Caribbean, and I think both terms were used interchangeably. It was a document that was about 75 pages, but essentially was an environmental review that was commissioned sometime around March. And it was commissioned before applications were made for a number of projects, including the jetty and the asphalt plant. And it was dated July 2025. So I'm not sure the date was submitted to Planning and Development Authority.
I believe, yes. Go ahead.
On receiving that IEE, which, as I said, was an environmental scoping, which would come before an EIA, the process or the procedure that PDA follows is a scoping exercise followed by terms of reference that are drawn out of the scoping exercise. And after the EIA is commissioned, in this case, there was the environmental review that was submitted to planning. When GLA rep, who incidentally is Miss Davis, and myself, when we went to planning sometime around September, because we understood that a document had been submitted to planning. Some people thought it was an EIA. It turned out that it was the IEE, which was not an EIA. But planning officials told us that they were intending to use the IEE as an EIA. And we pointed out to them, asked them in shock, how could you? Because that particular document, reflected so many red flags. And so there's so much that would have to be done in terms of mitigation measures for that project. And also that is only the first stage in an EIA. But we were alarmed, so we wrote them subsequent letters begging them not to do that. And also we wrote some articles and put it in the newspapers. But lo and behold, a month or two later, they did put their threat into, make good on their threat, that the IEE was used as an EIA.
This is right. So let us look at some of the critical issues from that report here. Phase one, it talks here, which of course the jetty that's going ahead right now, the asphalt and concrete plan, accommodation, material and storage. And here are some of the critical issues that I'm going to highlight here. It talks about loss of mature vegetation and wildlife habitat, creation of unstable soil conditions during earth movement, stormwater runoff directly into the sea, river, and Western Main Road, air pollution from cement, dust, and particulates from concrete plant, wastewater treatment from buildings, soil capacity to treat, air pollution from exhaust from burning oil in asphalt plant, impact on covering over limited sand beach to develop jetty, competition for use of seashore by locals, fishermen, and yachts that use the safe deep water anchorage, impact on traffic during road crossing, and movement of materials to and from the seashore. And of course, for each of the phases, of course, I do not want to really do a line-by-line treatise here, but for each of the phases, it really speaks to a litany of critical issues for each of those phases. And so, of course, this is a map of the area. So in your conversations with, for example, the Member of Parliament, or if you've had an audience with representatives of the PDA, or even audiences with the developers, the Reno, how have those concerns, those red flags that we're seeing here, how are they justifying going ahead with this, even in the place of those red flags? And have they even articulated whether or not they're going to be mitigating circumstances to treat with these issues?
To begin with, that initial meeting we had sometime in September, when after we had read all of what you have articulated, with a planning development authority, and the question was asked, how can you justify it? Which is the same question you're asking based on all of these measures that need to be mitigated. And they were not, I would have to say, it appeared that they had not read the report. So again, that was part of the alarm, that how could they be thinking of using it as an EIA when they could not admit in the meeting that they had read the report, and it seemed that they had not, and of which we also remarked in a letter to them and in the article to the press that they had not done the due diligence at the time to have even read the report before they were about to circulate it to the other stakeholders. And in fact, what they did with that report, along with the application that was submitted by Reno, Reno did something what is called salami slicing, which is frowned upon in quotes in the Commonwealth Caribbean. They took a project, instead of presenting a single project, they presented 7 different projects. So they were applying now from a development company that initially did not even apply. They built a concrete batching plant without applying for permission. Now they were applying in June of this year, last year, they were applying for 7 different projects, including the storage shed, the garage, all of these little projects that don't need an EIA were jumbled with the bigger projects like the jetty and the asphalt plant and the quarry.
The quarry, yes.
Yes, a jetty definitely needs an EIA. The 2016 Planning and Development Act states clearly that no coastal development can take place without an EIA. And it gives, of course, a schedule of all of those projects that will need an EIA. And all of those large ones that I tell you, the asphalt plant needs an EIA, and the quarry needs an EIA. That falls under the schedule, but it says specifically that no coastal development is going to need an EIA. So they put all of them together. And when you do that and you look at it separately, you don't get a chance to look at the cumulative impact of the project. So you never see the danger, the danger in its entirety. And that was not only salami sliced in that way, but it also was fast-tracked on the part of PDA. They sent it out to the Royal Grenada Police Force, which I suspect probably sits on the board. They sent it to Solid Waste. They sent it to Ministry of Health. They sent it to a number of different departments and entities to individually, in isolation, approve those projects. And this is what happened. And they were projects that needed an EIA came back saying approved by these individual entities.
Now, Ms. Davies, good afternoon. I believe where you are there might be some internet connectivity issues, but we are still going to proceed with your conversation. And of course, in a previous program, one of the residents in the area who spoke to us, of course, he's a long-term resident of the Woodford area. He really spoke to just the hazardous impacts and the quality of life impacts this project is having on not only the farmers in the area, but people who live there. We have to appreciate that there are residents in the area. So let us talk about, Chris, that environmental impact and how it's directly affecting the residents there in Woodford.
Thank you, Kellon, and good afternoon to your viewers and listeners.
Yes,
it's good to be here. GLA have been working very hard with the Woodford Group to try and make some sense of what's going on, because it's becoming apparent that in the same way as GLA had to challenge the planning authority in court, or the planning department as it was then in court, because their processes weren't being done properly, it's becoming very apparent that this is happening in Woodford as well. We accompanied Woodford to a community called Brooklyn, which is on a ridge just above where the plant is being constructed. And when you're standing on somebody's veranda in Brooklyn, we are actually looking straight down into the plant, into the industrial plant. So, all the emissions are going to be coming up straight into these people's houses.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, and, I appreciate that Prime Minister is saying, that this is an environmentally friendly operation. How do we know that? If we're not doing a proper environmental impact assessment and looking at all the emissions that these kinds of plants give off, how do we know that? Are we supposed to just take people's words for it? So there
is no validity in what is being said. In other words, who is again testing those claims? Those claims must
precisely.
be
Precisely. Yes. All those claims should be, and this is unfortunately one of the places where PDA seem to fall down all the time. There doesn't seem to be any monitoring and follow-up on any of these developments. Brian was just saying about this carbuncle in Levera. I heard last week that apparently they tried to block off an access from the La Fortune side into Levera Beach. And they were challenged by locals, thank goodness, and the contractor who said they couldn't do this. And my understanding is that the police also arrived, which is a good sign. But again, we're coming to, that PDA needs to have some regulations so that there is more transparency about what processes they are meant to be following, so that we, the public at large, we the people, can then come to them and say, look, this isn't okay, that isn't okay. We need to know exactly what our rights are within the legislation. And we've been trying to outline these in our environmental toolkit on the grenadaland.org website, so people can access that whenever they want to, whenever they're being challenged about things that are happening in their communities. But PDA needs to be much more vigilant about what is going on all around the country. For instance, Ms. Henry and I went to Beach House Beach the other day because we'd seen some drone footing by a young man from Victoria showing, what solar plants have built down there. And I was talking to Ms. Henry and I was saying, that is never the required distance from the high water mark. So we took a tape and we went down there and we measured the distance of the private property sign that they placed there and to the first villa that they put on the beach. I think that the maximum distance we got was 50 feet. This is nowhere near the 165 feet that construction, that developments are meant to be from the high water line. And Mr. Sylvester from La Sagesse, from the St. David's Development Organization, is saying the same to me. He's saying, Miss Davis, where they're putting all these boulders, they are taking away access to the beach for the people in Grenada, because everybody used to go to La Sagesse at some point or another. And that the distance that they're putting them is nowhere near the required 165 feet. And despite Mr. Sylvester asking them, I don't know how many times, to come and measure it, so that they can, be really clear about what is happening at La Sagesse and build their case, nobody has been to see them. It's very disappointing that they consistently don't follow up on what they're meant to be doing. And the other thing is that they actually, sorry, Callan.
No. I would allow you to finish, please. Yes.
Thank you. They wrote a letter to the Reno group saying that they needed to complete an ESMMP, which is an environmental and social monitoring and management plan, before any work was to begin on the jetty or the asphalt plant. This was what was gazetted in December.
Correct.
We haven't seen it.
I did read that edition of the Gazette as well.
There you go. Yeah. And we have continually followed up with PDA and asked them, so did you get it yet? Because work is going on in Woodford. Oh, they have given them 7 days to present it. They have given them this to present it. They will be back in touch with us when they get it. We haven't seen hide nor hair of an ESMMP.
Yeah.
You see, this is where we lose confidence in these entities who are meant to be doing their jobs, and they're not doing them.
And that has been the issue in Grenada. It's just, institutional decay, and I make no apologies for saying that. And so you ask yourself whether or not these institutions like the PDA, which is supposed to be providing oversight, whether or not they're just toothless tigers, paper tigers, if you will, who are just engaging in performative practice, right? But let us go on to talk about, in respect of the folks that you've reached out to, whether, of course, that's the residents in the area. That Woodford, it borders St. George Northwest, but most importantly, significantly, it borders all of the constituency of St. John. Have you reached out to? I know that in the past there were conversations with the Member of Parliament on this issue, but in the context now that this project has been approved without the proper due diligence processes, what conversations are you having or attempted to have with the Member of Parliament? What conversations have the residents had? Those are her constituents. After all, she has to go back to those folks for votes, right? What's happening there?
I just want to say one thing, right, in relation to this. In that there was a video released. There was a video released, I think, on Facebook last week or the week before, with Minister James big upping Reno, saying how wonderful they were and how professional they were and how, they're doing them a Boyer Road and this is going to be something wonderful. And to be quite frank, I just found that incredibly inappropriate, knowing that some of her constituents are at this point challenging what Reno is doing in her constituency. So that's my take on what's happening with the minister. I'll hand it over to Ms. Henry. I know she has a lot more to say about that.
Yes, Ms. Henry, in respect of the process of really bringing this to the attention, of course, the Planning and Development Authority should be the subsidiary body and the substantive body here that needs to engage in oversight and regulation. But of course, barring turning to the courts to treat with this, you do have a Member of Parliament. Of course, as one would appreciate that a Member of Parliament, their role is to also advocate for their constituents. Have you spoken to the Member of Parliament? Have you spoken to, for example, have you attempted to get an audience with the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Infrastructure in this? Of course, he has offered a defense here. And of course, there are questions as to whether or not he has the ability to just unilaterally proceed with giving approval as the line minister. That is a whole other question there that we can get into a conversation on. But what about those conversations with him as a line minister and with the MP James?
There's a long and troubled history trying to reach the MP as well as any government official on this issue. and I'm going to try to make it as short as I can. Because early in the game, before we knew when the site was being cleared, the MP came into the area, and we were all curious as to what was happening. So we took the opportunity to ask her what was happening. She said she didn't know, and of course we believed her then. But she let us know that we told her we were worried, and we would like to know what's happening, that development is happening, and we think we need to be consulted. Her rejoinder was that it was private property. And that was not a satisfactory answer. But, later on we saw that project morph before our eyes, and it turned out to be an industrial project. We did call a community meeting on the March 8th. That was last year. She was specifically invited, and because it was carded as a public meeting, even Reno came to that meeting. They came with some of the workers who are not residents of the community, but there's little we could do because it was a public meeting. The government came, a few government officials came to that meeting. The MP used that opportunity in part to settle scores with members of our organization who had been critical of her.
And when you say our organization, you're referencing here Grenada Land Actors?
No, we've since registered Woodford Environmental Alliance for Community Transformation. We Act. Okay. So that's a community organization that has taken on the Reno challenge. And at that time, we were not constituted as a community organization. And the meeting, she took the opportunity to, like I said, settle scores and tell off members of our group, one particular member. So that was, after that, there was no genuine opportunity to really meet with her. There was twice a member of our group, after that incident, went to her office in St. John and tried to engage her, to ask her to meet with us. That did not happen. She still said she still did not know what was happening. In fact, several members tried to go there. At least 2 or 3 members went to ask her, please let's tell us what's happening in Woodford. And it didn't work. There was never been a one-to-one conversation with her after that scolding that she gave to the community. But we wrote to the government at least 2 letters asking them between February and about April to please let us have an audience. Please come in and try to resolve the matter with Woodford. We're not anti-government. We're not anti-development. There are people in our community who understand, who know that neighborhood they grew up. As you said in an earlier program that you used to go up to with the Campbells, up
with the Campbells, yeah,
estate, yes. So that people knows that area. And what we were saying is that locate the plant before it's too late. Relocate the plant in a section of that estate that's not going to be such a nuisance to us. And
so you did offer a suggestion for relocating the plant in another section of Woodford.
We asked for a discussion of it. Okay. We asked the government to let us talk about moving the plant from where it is now. We got no response from either of those letters. We wrote to the ombudsman so that the ombudsman could get to the government to find out why there was no response. There was no response from the ombudsman either. Neither was there any response from the government, even subsequent to that. We wrote several. We wrote the Attorney General. We wrote to Ministry of Health. We wrote to a number of relevant departments, including Ms. James' ministry. There was no response.
That's the Ministry of Climate Resilience and the Environment, which we go around the world drumming up funds for that, but we are destroying the environment at home. But I do want to bring in Mr. Gill here. Mr. Gill, welcome to the Bubb Report, sir. Any relation to Ali Gill, sir?
Not have I know much. Not have I know much. Family history, which I don't know much.
Okay. But Mr. Gill, tell us about your relationship with Woodford. Of course, we know that, again, I know I've been up to, I believe it's a place called Mondo up there. Very rich agricultural land. As a young reporter, I would go up there with the Campbells and so on to see their operation there. And of course, we know that there are some farm roads up there as well, but there are people who live in the area too. So talk about, again, and we do see in the EIA, it talks about just the, and someone is even mentioning here the issue of asthma and things like that. How is this environmentally impacting you all, but also in terms of the housing infrastructure? That is another issue that was raised in this report from JECO, right? So let us talk about those impacts, sir.
Well, to be honest, my situation is not because I'm not really dwelling around there, but I'm a fisher folk.
Okay, you're a fisherman. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that really search the whole coastline looking for jacks and other fish. And as we stand there now, we have a serious environmental problem, which because of so much around off from the land in different areas with the rivers jumping and the chemicals and whatsoever is coming down, we find out we are losing a lot of species of fish. And the government mainly think is depletion. We overfishing with stock. But I could point out to them a lot of different species of fish, what is been disappearing from us, what the fisher folks is not responsible for, is just because of the pollution from the land. Like Woodford and this place today, this is an area where we do a lot of fishing, looking for jacks, and you find over the time now a lot of changes because you have the perseverance. They keep always throwing in a lot of the pollution. Then where they put in these plants on top of the hill, and in the case of Woodford, where it will take a longer period to see through and enter the sea. On the hill where this is the one written, and all the asphalt, the chemical from the asphalt will be sweeping down into the river. They have the inside. So you're talking about a serious impact, and it wouldn't take a long time to show up itself because of the volume of the cable coming down. There is not an area where you'll find, if it's flat, the rate at which you go enter travel will take much longer than that. But I think this is something the government need to think. And what bad about it is that they did not. I hear about that when the lady consult me, look at what is taking place. There was no consultation with the users as stakeholders, as the fisher folks, what is we will be using there, and to find out their opinion more than just hear that these people and they must put and in writing a village the way you have people, and we so serious and concerned about the environment. I think the government need to be more smart in the way they construct and do the things.
Yeah. Somebody's saying, they call you Rumpel. Is that your nickname, sir?
Yes. Which I prefer people call me so most of the time because that's why you grow up and don't.
Everybody has a nickname in Grenada, but Rumpel, it says you've always been at the viewer says you always advocate for the fishery sector, especially scene fishing. But I do want to ask you, in the context of that the Halifax Harbor area, and we have it on the map here. Can you talk about how significant and how important that area has been and continue to be for fisher folk, especially those who do scene fishing?
Well, let me tell you. As you know, one of the basic species the species of fish with is the jacks, the big eye scad, and which is a kind of pelagic species. But there come a time that a lot of it was coming in that particular area, and when once they come in, the most of the time these are fish who don't really like too much of dirty and polluted area. So it's very, very, very important in the sense that we try and keep the as clean as possible. And I thought in the time come that I see how they could find a solution maybe to help clean up that area there, and to knowing that a lot of money might be available where we could through climate resist the blue economy and see we could get something and to help us instead of trying to create more problem to for the pollution. But there is a very particular, as a matter of fact, all the whole western side, wherever it is a little spot is available, is very important to the fisher folks, especially seeing people in trying to catch jacks and things, because we go around from I just travel from St. Patrick's down to St. George's, searching the coastline looking for ducks, and you cannot leave out one spot without searching. There is every spot is important because you don't know where they go show up, and there is certain time day in that particular in Halifax Harbor Day, that is where you might find some ducks. So we need to preserve and protect all this area in terms of habitat.
Have you and your association, have you brought those concerns to the Ministry of Fisheries and the blue economy? Because of course, you know, there is always talk about the blue economy these days. The Minister of the Blue Economy talks about, you know, how important that is as part of our economic development in Grenada. So if we're saying that that is important while we are destroying it, we are really speaking on two ends of our mouth here.
Now, in particular, my organization thing, we never bring it up to was more through the Woodford, more connected to the organization in Woodford and thing, because along the course I wasn't really fully in the organization as I should due to certain personal issues and whatsoever. But through the Woodford, when they brought it to my attention, I remember I went in a meeting, and when I was there, and then I see people from Reno there, but you look as workers, you look as any representative from the head table or what came there, and I was sort of surprised seeing that as soon as that I expect the people from the higher level to come and discuss and to say what is what and the thing, but that wasn't the case. And in times now when we're talking about protecting our coral reef, and this is thing what the blue economy been promoting and all this stuff. Why should the government allow in such a polluted thing to enter the we water? We have to try and prevent all this pollution from entering the water, because if you want to protect the reef, and the pollution is what really destroying the reef more than anything else, they should be thinking better and look at the impact the pollution will have on the reef, and stop playing hypocrite and talking about MPA. Because if you want to promote MPA and you're not protecting the reef from the pollution, which is the one that really destroying the reef more than the reef, more than the overfishing and the type of fishing method we're using. We need to go back to the drawing board and ask yourself the question, are we living on the wrong foot for the right event? So are we trying to play hypocrite? Is it a matter of trying to do what is straight and proper? Because we need the reef, we need to protect, and it's mainly when you watch how we coastline and how because I just dive a lot and look at the reef and a lot and observe a lot, and you could see these is what is really destroying our reef is more pollution, more than the method of fishing we're using, and so
or the warming of the ocean, as they say. Yes,
the warming of the ocean. Yes, they also that have a lot of, but on the coastline here, a lot of reef is dying
because of the pollution.
Because of the pollution. Let me give you something brief. As a little boy growing up, I remember the whole coastline, most of it is so full of seaweed, almost like the sargassum, wrong. And you used to see a lot of parrotfish and other species of fish through it, feeding thing. Now, the whole coastline where you find out is full of green algae. You could see the same brown seaweed is struggling to survive, and then the most of them stones and them have become burnt, and as you touch them, all what you're seeing is like mud, silt, and this kind of thing. Because the water used to be very clear before, even though the sea rough, you could have see fish swimming through the wave. This thing gone. They're gone. So I think allowing more chemical to come down into the sea is not something good for us. We have to try and restrain and cut off as much of these things coming down, because you won't go ahead, seems to be we won't be ending up because I don't care what the $2 we are getting, but we have to look at the long-term effect and find a way of solution. Because I was thinking, when them people come and say, I was thinking, why, I know we have an asphalt plant down in Woodford. I think, why didn't them find a way of joining a margin or whatsoever is the case, instead of going up on the hill? Them alone not know. No, they say money talk.
We would certainly be watching this space, and thanks for giving this important context to what's happening there. Again, we will definitely attempt to reach out to, again, the government of Grenada by way of the Prime Minister, as well as by way of the Member of Parliament for the constituency of St. John. We have tried unsuccessfully to get Reno to speak with us. We will continue to try to do that. But I think many folks, many media in Grenada have been trying to do that. But if past this prologue, and based on Reno's reputation in other places in the Caribbean, I don't think they are fond of speaking to the media. But that does not mean that we will not report on this very critical issue. And of course, I have a personal bias for environmental issues, because that formed the basis, a part of the basis of my dissertation research. I did a lot of climate justice work. So we do have to close the program. So Ms. Davies, what's next? What's next for this? Again, advocating, I think, advocacy is a very big piece of what you continue to do now. But let us know where you would be going with this, because of course, again, one of the things I say is that there is a hypocrisy here, because Grenada and other developing countries in the Caribbean, we go to these climate summits and talk about how much we are victims of climate change, and talk about how much we are victims of environmental degradation, when we are pursuing public policy as governments that engage in the same practice that we go and speak against. So I think it's important that we put that in context. So, Ms. Davies, over to you for some closing comments.
Mr. Bob, can I say something?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Based on supporting what you're saying there, for example, you find especially smaller Caribbean people, when they go to this meeting, them summit, and then you hear they talk, as you say, they talking about them as victim. But what they do in terms of practice to help to prevent these things, most of them, they don't do nothing, they just throw a blind eye. They go, they talk, they think they might get the finance, but to implement what is necessary, they're not doing it. To help protect this thing. Because let me give you a thing. I remember I went in a workshop in the Bahamas, and inside of them harbor, they say they used to be striping the fish, and all of a sudden them fishes and them gone. Only to realize is that the oil from them restaurant and other places around there and the pollution thing chasing away all these fishes and them.
The runoff.
And eventually, in order for them to think, they had also close down all them restaurants and things around the area there and put a restriction. Then they see these fishes and them start coming back. But in our case, we don't have this kind of policy.
Yeah.
And if you allow Renault to think, it's the same thing what be done bad and it comes to worse for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dr. Bob, just before the closing, just want to make one comment. That very document you have, the IEE, that's on the screen.
Yes.
The consultant, Jekyll Caribbean, they recommended that the plant, for health and safety reasons, be relocated. Granted that it was just a nominal distance of 500 feet, but we thought in our community that at least would open the discussion. So when it came up to that we would get an opportunity, a final opportunity to say, well, no, please push it a little further away, and be able to recommend to them where they could place the plant. So if the consultant that was hired recommended the removal of the plant for health and safety reasons, and that was not listened to, that gives you even a clearer indication of what is happening.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that context. Chris, yes. Is there anything else you want to add?
Thank you, Caroline.
Yes. Okay. And Chris told you about what was happening on Silver Sands Beach Club. And what is interesting, it was referenced by Mr. Duncan in the previous segment as one of the scalable, within scale, one of the smaller projects that were within scale, and it really is aesthetically pleasing. But that project is 50 feet from the water line, as Chris said, and it should have been 165. So what is planning going to do about it? What is planning going to do about a project that is more than, that is 3 times too close to where it is right now, from where it should be in terms of the high water mark?
In the high water mark, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Again, some food for thought, and again, those are put on our Rolodex there for future programming. Yes, Chris, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Your first time on the program, I believe, but we hope to have you back in the future. Yes,
I will definitely come back. Let me just say that I wanted to support Ms. Henry when she was saying about the salami slicing earlier. This is something that GLA, are continually advocating for, is proper processes from the planning department. And the salami slicing actually does not assist, because not only do they salami slice, as she said, they also round robined the application, which meant the group that is okaying these planning applications don't sit together and talk together about the implications of the different aspects, according to their whatever role they're playing. So environment doesn't get to talk to health, and health doesn't get to talk to solid waste, and that's what needs to happen. The group, they need to facilitate that group to come together so that they can hear each other's perspective and get a better understanding of the impact of such a huge development on the communities. And the other thing is that we have to have community community consultations. We've ratified the Escazú Agreement. We need to put that into play so that community consultation is a must before, during these developments, because unless you understand the impact on the communities, how can you make a decision? How can you make an informed decision about anything? So PDA, please, get your act together, create some regulations so we understand how you're meant to be working, and stop salami slicing projects, stop round robbing, make sure your group comes together so that they can have, some dialogue, some discussion about, different people's perspectives about what's happening in a development. And also I would appeal to whoever is listening and whoever did it before. I think some of it was done by Grenada. We need to do some more ridge to reef advocacy. Maybe GLA could pick that up at some point as well. But, it's to educate people about what happens on the ridge ends up very often in the reef, like our fisherman was just saying, Rampo. We need to understand the impact of everything that we do on the environment and take it from there and advocate for ourselves and challenge all the time. We don't have to take things sitting down. We can challenge, we can talk to, as you're saying, parliamentary representatives. We can petition government. We ran a workshop on that very recently. So there are many, many ways that we can make our voices heard. Thank you, Kellon.
Absolutely. And
Did I go on too
finally,
long?
yes. No, you're fine. You're totally fine. It's very important context and information. Mr. Gilson, over to you for some closing comments.
Yeah. Well, you see, what I'm saying is that one of the problems we're facing in especially the smaller developing states and them, most of the time projects come, the people that have been affected is not being consulted. And no side time, because the government, in most cases, they find they in a powerful position, they could just shove it down your throat and you just have to take it or leave it, and in a very disrespectful manner. This is why you find a lot of things, you find trouble will stir up, and some of them projects have been failed because the people who what is being affected, in most cases, they has no idea of what is taking place and when it start affecting them and they start to rebel, then they say they become delinquent. But if they consult them and let it be part and parcel of the whole process, then things will be much more successful and much more better. But I think we need to be, the government and who in charge need to pay more close attention in consulting people and ensuring that in going forward, let everybody be part and parcel of the whole process. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And Ms. Henry, closing comments.
Government is there to serve the community, to support the community. When the Renault industrial development is fully operational, there'll be sections of the community that will be uninhabitable due to exposure of dust, noise, toxins. This extreme closeness to homes in the watershed area and the closeness to the Perseverance landfill, it was preempted in the JECO study. The consultant warned that the emissions from the concrete batching plant mixed with the quarry operations, mixed with the emissions from the dump, that would play havoc on the community. And that is the reason why, partly the reason I think why it was suggested or recommended that the plant be removed or relocated, I should say. The government has set this aside by quashing the EIA. They've actually set all of these mitigation measures aside. and they have left us unable to enjoy our homes, our property, our social amenities. The church on the hill, on the ridge above me, on some Saturdays they have to literally close their service because of the noise from the Reno construction, and they have not started being operational. So think about when the quarry is blasting, the trucks are coming in and out, and they're reversing, and they're making all sorts of noise. The asphalt plant engine is going, the concrete batching plant, that engine is going. All of this happening in one select space, 150 feet from homes. How are we going to live there? They've made us so vulnerable to environmental poison. I don't know how we're going to live. I think that is going to be uninhabitable for a small subsection of the community. Dr. Bubb, I'm not hearing
yes,
you.
Yes, I just find it sad that there's just a condescending tone in the way that the residents is like, oh, we're going to go ahead. What are you going to do? And if you have a problem with it, we'll gaslight you. And that quite frankly is sad and disrespectful, really.
Well, at one point they did ask us to make sacrifice.
Yeah.
We were told we should make sacrifice. How do you make sacrifice? As though the dump is not enough sacrifice.
Yeah. So Ms. Henry, thank you. It's something we'll be following up with the PDA on. Of course, again, we have attempted by way of the PDA to reach Mr. Kenrick Fullerton, who is the chair of the Planning and Development Authority, without much success. But we will continue to try, and we will continue to call them out every single time that they ignore us, because that's what they have been doing, or just kicking the can down the road, or telling us, or talk to this person. They have couched their responses in very procedural technicalities that they have been using, as they do with journalists. But I've been in this business for all my life, and I know all of the tricks of the trade of government technocrats when they do that. But we will hopefully continue.
They've done that to us. They have not responded to any letters from us.
Yeah.
There was a time we sent letters to every member of the board, and nobody has answered, not one member, including the chairman, Mr. Fullerton.
Yeah. So thank you again, Ms. Henry, Mr. Gill before you, and of course, Ms. Davies. Thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having us, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, viewers and listeners, very, very important conversation here. Again and again, I always say that some of the folks who were front and center advocating for beach access, folks who are protesting down at Camahan Park, folks who are protesting the range project at Lasages, my understanding is that some of those same folks go to range and have drinks and have a good time. They wine and dine. It's the hypocrisy for me with politics. And that's why I would never get involved in frontline politics, because I'm allergic to hypocrisy. And in politics, I think in many ways you have to be a hypocrite, even though sometimes you yourself don't even know that you're being a hypocrite. So that would be my final comment on this. But we are going to continue to follow this story with the same alacrity that we follow other stories. And of course, folks, we went over time today, but it was important that we have this particular segment put in. So on behalf of the producers of the program, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellan Bubb, wishing everyone a pleasant week ahead, and we'll see you next week for yet another installment of the Bubb Report. Take care. Bye-bye.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this. So I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.